Bollywood UFOs, and later on we're going to do some remote viewing. I'm sure you're going to find that very interesting. So without further ado, take it away, Tony.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Now, I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't have any objections to me sitting, but it is to do with mental processes, exhaustion and targeting, because I am a targeted individual. There's no let up in the targeting, and this is what happens when the man in the street has interaction with UFOs. So what we're going to do, there's a lot of data to get through this afternoon, and I wanted to just blend some of the Indian stuff with some of my stuff, and then we were going to go into the remote viewing stuff and shed a bit of light on India's activities in remote viewing as well. So I hope you don't have any objections to me just sat while I talk. It's just easier for me to get through the talk. Well, it's easier for me to think, because when you're targeted, it can get pretty hair-raising. Last week alone there was some hair-raising goings on that I can't talk about, and it's not because I'm being secretive, it's just that there's a safety element to all this. You're not safe. Contact experiencers like me can be targeted. We're not safe. And we're not here to indulge in narcissism, to tell you we're the alien ambassadors or anything like that. I'm just here to tell it as it happened, like it is. And last time I spoke to you, I'd lost my mother. I think I recall telling you that. But also I'd gone in for a major operation at hospital. So if you'd have seen me last time, you may have seen me out here with a hernia to match, all on top of getting my mother sorted as well. And something very strange happened in the hospital after the operation involving aliens and UFOs, involving Nordic aliens actually. And also something very strange happened last night involving that young man sat there, which I found quite staggering. And I didn't tell him, he just came out with it, and I'm going to share that story with you as well.
He's quite old though, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he is, isn't he? Yeah, when you think about it. He's knocking on about 70. Anyway, but basically, so what we're going to go, we're just going to have a walk through India's stuff. There's, for example, in India, 27 types of ghosts. There's all sorts going on. And the reason why I looked at India, I'll explain. But really, India lead the way. In fact, their Black's operations technology base is bigger than the US and Roswell. Everybody thinks that the United States are the big players with UFOs. They've got the secret stuff going on, but my God, India, they know their stuff when it comes to UFOs and the research of it and all that kind of thing. That is actually one of the UFOs following me back from the pub. It's actually following me all the way back. I'm sober, and that UFO is following me all the way back home. It's walking with me, it's protecting me, and its origins are very unique, which I'll come to. So I'm going to blend some of my stuff. I am a contact experiencer. I have had contact with aliens. I make no apology for it. And I wouldn't call them aliens either. I'd call them highly developed star nations, highly developed people, spiritually and mentally. And behind the scenes there's hell on. Behind the scenes there's absolute hell on going on. So what we've got is India studied anti-gravity technology derived from the unlikely sources, including ancient Indian religions. If you look at the Vedas text, we know, I know and others know, that non-local communication is the key to talking with extraterrestrials. The US recovered foreign technology applications from Roswell under Colonel Philip Corso. So the word foreign in US military doctrine can also mean alien. And what happened was Colonel Corso wrote in his book, you know, the day after Roswell, yes? The day after Roswell, well actually there was a guy called Arthur Trudeau, was his boss, who wrote a separate autobiography, who actually hinted in a paragraph that that was indeed what is going on. As we will see, this has run amok. It has been disastrous for the US government in more ways than one, and they know it, but they're not really coming clean on that. That's Mr. Trump there looking at my UFO briefing. No, they're not really coming in. It's a threat, but what a threat. So, what we've got at the moment, currently in the media, is a question of narrative. If you look at Nick Pope and a few others of the researchers like Luis Elizondo, some of these top spooks who stood up there for the To the Stars Academy and indicated that there was a threat out there, the threat everywhere. It's actually it's actually complete tosh what they're talking about. It's not a, how can I put it into words? It is a threat, but it's not a threat in the way you would think. And it's beginning at the moment with an alien Cold War. At the moment behind the scenes there is an alien Cold War, and this is due to the actions of the US government going down the wrong route with the wrong people. These star nations, therefore, step out of the narrative. When I say step out the narrative, the mainstream media tells us that it's a threat, but Joe Bloke in the street, or contact experiencers like me, people in Sweden, India, Russia, all around, are getting a different story from them. We get a different story from the people in the UFOs as to what is going on, which is a very interesting one. And if you've looked at the agency, the Collins Elite, that closely discusses the UFO threat as being demonic. The UFO threat isn't demonic, although you can have aliens with psychopathy. You can have aliens doing acts of evil. It's not all nice out there. However, on saying that, what they didn't tell a recent senator in a briefing on one of the New York Times papers, this senator said, I've been briefed, there's a threat in deep space, the blah, 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 blah. No, no. The threat is not in deep space. The threat is in their own backyard. And this agency, the Collins Elite, which was kind of like beyond MJ12, they studied the demonic and interactions with the demonic very carefully indeed, because of course when you're looking at pop culture and these people doing these gestures and all the symbolism, they don't realise at all what's lurking behind the scenes with it. And so this was a Christian agency, and they believed that there was a demonic element to the UFOs, and there is. There's actually a hybrid threat from it which is demonic. It's biblical in nature. It is a threat to the human race, and the American government know this, but they're not coming clean on that either. And that makes me cross. And the reason why it makes me effing cross, pardon my language, is because men died on the beaches at Omaha for tyranny, not to walk through the back door. But this is what America did, and they know that they did it, and I know that they did it, and a few others do. By complex irony, this is the blocks to disclosure. And I talk of it in this very simplistic way, indulge me. Basically, Arthur Daly turns up on the US government's doorstep and says, we've got this marvellous UFO to sell you. In fact, you can have it for free. Just, we're going to move it into that house over there, but don't look at what we're doing. Don't question us, don't look at our motives. Just take this UFO free of charge and do what you want with it. And of course, that's where it all went hair-raisingly wrong. And that's where so they have the bastard audacity to say in public that there's a threat. It's a deep space threat. We're here to protect you. Whereas at the same time, they have literally screwed it up by doing what they've done with this. It's a very dangerous area to talk about, and I can't really talk about it any further because some of us as contact experiencers have received threats about all this, because the truth is there. That is what's going on. Now, my first vision was at age 2, and it was a Hindu vision. It was actually the equivalent of a symbolic Lord Ganesh vision of elephants walking through the wall, trumpeting, note the ears. Very, very important in this symbolism that we're using here with the Hindu India kind of UFO stuff. The ears, the elephant ears, so important. Now, what's going to happen? It's called the Path of Yasmat. They told me Yasmat is Sanskrit. It means as you sow, so you reap. So it means that what I'm doing, my work, has replications into the future. Very deep replications into the future. What I'm saying, and it also means you sow, you reap. So somebody like me has to be very careful. There's deep symbolism behind Lord Ganesh, deep symbolism behind it that I want to explain later on. And oddly enough, some of it that they were doing last night here with clairaudience and clairvoyance, they were having a go last night, and that was fascinating in that sense. So just indulge me, ladies and gentlemen. So what is wrong with this remark? At 0300, in the epicentre of my consciousness, I heard an alien in a UFO, I believe it to be over the top of my house, I make no apology for it, say this. It takes 10 minutes to travel from Yorkshire, and it takes to the US, and 20 minutes to Antarctica. What's wrong with that remark? We're so blinded. We're blinded to something. There's a blind spot to that remark. What do you think of that? What is wrong with that? 3 in the morning. Can anybody guess what's wrong with that statement? There's a glaring blind spot to it.
It's an infringement on you.
You got it. You're the first person in an audience when I ask this question to get that. It's an infringement. That's exactly what it is. And that's the worrying thing. And at some level, it's been allowed. So what we've got here going on is, who the hell has the right in the epicentre of my consciousness to tell me all that? Who the hell has the right to do that? Well, seemingly this ET thinks he has the right to do that, and it's mind invasive and it's rape. And what happens is when you're a contact experiencer, you'll get your mind raped. you will have forces coming at you, left, right and centre. Talk in Watford, some people got up because I was going deep into this area of the mind control torture. Now, I don't normally do it, but it was to emphasise something, and they couldn't get it. They couldn't get that the negativity, it caused a debate among the audience that the negativity must be looked at in order for it to evolve into a higher kind of consciousness, to expand, to bring peace. Does that make sense to you all? Does that make sense? So that's seemingly what was going on there, and some of them actually walked away from it in irritation because I was highlighting the negative. For some reason, my computer's come down. This is my father, and my story is all about spiritual strength when faced with adversity. My mother, I believe, was targeted. We went through a hell of a time. I think I explained it to you last time I was here. Those of you in the audience, were you here last time when I explained my mother? Just a show of hands. So 1, 2. Right, I'll explain if you weren't here before. I looked after my mother for 8 years. 3 years of that she was incontinent. It was absolutely heartbreaking for me to deal with all that as a son, but I did for 3 years. There was an indication that coming towards the end of a time when she had Alzheimer's and dementia, the Alzheimer's shut her down. I believe she was targeted because something was terrifying her in her sleep. She kept saying, Anthony, Tony, I'm terrified, there's something going on, I don't know what's going on. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And also what was heartbreaking was my father. I believe that he was targeted and he was approached, so he told me, by the KGB in Vienna. Vienna at the time had a rather big spy ring in the 1950s going on. And he was indicating to me he was a powerful healer. He could heal with his hands. He healed dead cats. He brought back Auntie Edna, I think it was, no, Uncle Bill, from the back of an ambulance. Much to the astounding of the ambulance crew with his hands-on healing techniques. Uncle Bill was going to be a goner, but he brought him back from the dead. A cat he brought back from the dead. He had this miraculous ability, but he abused me at age 10. He abused me quite unpleasantly at age 10. It was awful. And upon reflection, I do believe that a man of that ability would have demonic forces targeting him. So I believe that in the process of forgiveness, that my father was a man of exceptional ability who was targeted. And it can happen, and if you look in the Bible, there's biblical accounts of people being targeted individuals, even in the Bible. So the phenomena of targeted individuals goes on. For example, with me, targeting with this technology includes being woken up by gunfire at 3 in the morning. It included being woken up at 3 in the morning to tell me that they're on bigger salaries than I was at the time. It included alarm clocks and waking me up. And as a contact experiencer, I'm quite serious that I don't know how long I've got. I don't know how long I have got to live with all this going on around me, because it's unpleasant and it's not good, but it is all about bringing the negative, which is covert, to over-awareness. You cannot go around in this universe, as Lord Krishna in the Gita would say, you cannot go around in the universe doing what you think you can do. He didn't say that, but the esoteric impression is you can't do that without the universal law of the police coming down on it. You just can't do it. And that appears to be what's happening. Here we go, here's some of the things here, some entries from my journals. I don't know whether you could see that. That's one of my favourites on the 8th of July 2003. I've still got the journals. It's a clear record of what they were doing to me before I had full-on contact with the ETs. They, who were targeting me, did not expect the level of contact that I was getting. And as you can see on the 8th of July, there's an entry there where I don't even know what time of bloody day it is, because I'm being deprived of sleep, I'm being targeted. It's horrendous. That picture there is the picture of the man. It's a very accurate mock-up of one of the MK Ultra spivs based in the UK who targeted me. And what is fascinating about this is not that he thinks he's done anything wrong, but what will be fascinating is the level of backup to cover his tracks he will have behind him, the level of secrecy and backup he will have behind him. But he made the error of coming to visit me in a pub in Selby, where I used to live, and he made the error of walking into that pub and stating to his colleague what he was doing to me. Only he would know that. It was one of the things he was doing to me with mind control, and he muttered it to me as I walked past him. And it was very strange, because his colleague got up, and they stood, and there was a mirror there, and his colleague looked like that and went, "Why isn't Anthony talking to us?" These freaks then decided to leave the pub. And I make sure, is my mission, that every time I speak and talk, that he reaches for the bloody drinks cabinet after what he's done to me. He's real, it's not a figment of my imagination. Contact experiences in the UK and worldwide, in fact, have a horrendous job with the antics of covert people with mind control technology who are trying to hack into your head to see if what you're talking about is correct. They will do anything to try and get at the information to do with UFOs. But never mind, because India actually did that by looking at their ancient text, and they got it sus under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who was not silly at all. India, when it comes to UFOs, lead the way. And of course, then we've got the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Programme. I wonder if anybody's heard of that. Has anybody heard of AATIP at all? The Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Programme is the Pentagon's equivalent of looking at the UFO phenomena. India did it under many sub-aspects, including looking at Vyama. They did it very well. But the Americans decided to go for this, which is AATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Indication Programme. The MOD did it under something called Project Condign, when they looked at plasma in the air defence region. The Norwegian government looked at it under Project Hesteland. And these plasma UFOs that are flying over have a very iconic background to them, which is very surprising. And they revealed themselves. But as you can see, there we go. Some of the things in ATIP: rapid deployment, enemy evasion, first strike capability, this, that, the other, anything to do with killing each other, anything to do with destruction, but yet we can't seem to clean up the environment in our oceans. And these spiritual beings in the UFOs are being demonised in some way as them to be warlike and a threat to us, but yet you've got that circus going on. We seem to be very good, outstanding at developing this technology to annihilate each other. And there are 32 sub-aspect projects to AATIP. What was interesting is that remark there. Specific elements in the Department of Defence resist the effort based on philosophical differences. So what they're doing is they're actually not wanting any of this to be disclosed based on philosophical differences within the Department of Defence. And if we have a look, it's because it relates to them. So it relates to the fact that an element of the Department of Defence, actually the Defence Intelligence Agency, knew via this agency that UFOs, there was a demonic component to them. Not all of them, but there was. And in Linda Moulton Howe's book High Strange Volume 1, before even this book was written by Nick Redfern, there's an indication by Linda Moulton Howe that people of the DIA came to see her to talk about their concerns regarding something called non-human entities, or NHE, which is the problem, and that relates to demonic. As I say, in India they've got 27 types of ghost, which I'll come to later. But can you see where that's going? So do you follow that so far? So far there's been a cost to all this. So far disclosure doesn't appear to be happening. And this is the thing. This is the kicker, ladies and gentlemen, that bit. Anything on non-locality is classified. Why do you think that might be? Anything under non-locality being communication breakdown between the distance between 2 points, the distance between time and space is collapsed, making communication very easy. I'll come to it later. But why do you think they might classify that? I'll tell you why they might classify that, you don't have to answer. It is because that's the key to communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. In fact, if they'd have pushed it last night with what they were doing, with the exercise they were doing, there's a possibility they could have communicated with ETs. It's in the same medium and quantum environment as clairvoyance, clairaudience and remote viewing, which we'll talk about later. So the non-locality of all this was classified. Specific elements, resisted it, and there's a reason for that, because that's the gateway to the truth. That is the gateway. And also, what happened is the guy who targeted me didn't realise that he was walking into this amazing flying circus, this visitation that goes on where I have contact with these people behind the UFOs. The reason why is a constant evasion. I don't understand quite why fully yet, but I understand that there's going to be more coming from them. They didn't let me down in November, which I'll come to. They didn't let me down, but there's some demonstrations of them coming in over the house. That one there, where it says object, has a particular kit story to it, which I'm going to go into. That there is a demonstration, clear demonstration of them. That little ball of light comes in, rotates around the main triangle object and flies off at speed. And there's some actual exaggerations on the internet that we're 10,000 years ahead, we're this, that and the head, they're so far a year ahead of us. There are roughly 700 years, they were telling me. So these ETs, 700 years ahead. And what you've now got is the flying circus, as I call them, running an opposite narrative to what you're seeing in the media about UFOs. So what you've got is a flying circus of UFOs and star nations that are doing their own thing, separate from this media threat narrative. And it's our governments, even though I don't trust them, but our governments need to back the winning horse, which is the flying circus, because that is where the information is held. But you see, our governments, our highest leaders, decision makers are denied this information. They are denied what that is all about. But when that starts to operate separately, then that's when things start to get exciting, I've got to say. Unmarked helicopter filming me there in the middle. Helicopter over Southport, that's the unmarked helicopter filming me in the middle, all to do with my harassment, which was quite, and that's before we get into the India stuff as well, that's the UFO illuminating the TV antenna. And as you can see, it comes in over my house and it illuminates the TV antenna, and that's when I started getting the strange phone calls, the MK Ultra mind invasive stuff. No explanation as to why. It was all very odd. Being followed, being stalked. It was truly insane, I have to say. And that's it. I'm sure you've seen it before. Illuminating a TV antenna, because the theme is communication. The theme with them is to wave at our government. Advanced star nations waving at governments. Separate from the narrative of what they think you should know. That's what the problem is. It's what they think you should know, rather than what you need to know from these people who are doing this narrative, and it makes me very cross indeed. And this goes on to what I'm doing is I'm actually updating you as Truth Seekers Newcastle to the information regarding my contact with ETs. Then we'll move into a bit of the India stuff. So what we've got is, this happened in my old house and bedroom. My first interaction happened with them in '97. And I wanted to share this marvellous drawing with you. And what's happening there is I've got the ET looking at my old dresser in a place called Robert Street. At the time, I was 10 years of age. We were living in a house that had no electricity, no bathroom. I was unclean. I used to get beaten up at school for looking like a gypsy. Used to get spat in the face, and people used to call me a nigger. We had no heating in the house. And suddenly, when I'd moved to another location in the same town, fast asleep, this alien lady appeared in my dreams, like that. That's such a dead ringer for her, and just said, "How do I look?" Her hair was absolutely beautiful, and what is amazing about these female ETs is that they ooze femininity. They just have this feminine grace about them, which I find absolutely fascinating. And that was her, and she plays a bit of a part in what happens next to me with all this. And that's a very accurate drawing of what she looks like. And what they were doing is this. My first true vision of her began in '97, as I said. And what they're doing is they're monitoring human, marine, and nuclear activities as a matter of routine, because some of their bases are in the ocean, especially near South America. More closer to the movie The Abyss. Has anybody seen the film The Abyss? They're very close to that. Very close indeed to what goes on, because what they're also keeping covered up is extraterrestrial life in our oceans is being kept quiet as well. So we've got a threat narrative running. They're telling you what you think you should know. They would sooner than disclose any of this information, they would sooner nuclear bombs on each other. They would sooner nuke each other. They'd sooner have a world war with thousands dying than to actually disclose any of this information to the public, which I find insane. And I'm owed an apology, actually. I feel I'm owed a very big apology. But it's not a New Age platitude. What I'm saying by this is there are persistent warnings from them about human nuclear activities. There's a researcher called Richard Dolan who says that anybody, researchers like myself who are having contact experiences and talking about nuclear war, well, that's a New Age platitude in the 1970s. The aliens are here to talk peace, man, and that's a New Agey thing. That doesn't happen. I assure you the warnings from the aliens are very clear on this as to where we're going, especially with Russia and China and North Korea, and I know America's not whiter than white, but that's my vision of a submarine in about 97 UFO passes over it at speed there, as we can see, and that was my first vision, and that's the UFO over me at 6 AM, at the height of trying to look after my mother, who is dying of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, and I'm trying to care for her, and it's just hell's own job because I'm also being targeted. I don't know how I kept my sanity. I nearly went insane, frankly, with it all. And this is a vision, that's her, again, in a UFO at 6 AM, coming in over my house. Now, people would argue, oh, well, it's not a UFO, it's a plane, it's this, I know what I saw. And that's her in the UFO coming in at 6 AM over my house there. her face absolutely outraged at what I was having to put up with. I mean outraged. And they told me where the harassment was coming from and what was going on, and I can't talk about it unfortunately, but they told me what was going on, and she was outraged. So if you ever met an alien woman who's morally outraged, she's it. Very cross, because I was having to put up with this, I was having to struggle, and there was a clear escalation in contact with them, and that is due to my mother. Very bizarre, but what I can't get my head around, and I'm just being frank and honest, is why they didn't intervene with my mother, but seemingly there must be some higher law going on, I don't know. But that's them. And that's a UFO again. It's an elongated object that passes what passes a UAV. So that UAV appears over my house. That's them from their bases in the Pacific, if you get the picture. The elongated object is passing the UAV at tremendous speed. And we tried to slow it down and we couldn't. And she indicated that her base was from the South Pacific area. South Pacific, that's your comparison there. That's the Pacific UFO taken near New Zealand. That's the UFO over my house that is about to buzz the UAV that's coming in at speed. There's this constant theme of radio antennas, this constant theme of buzzing aircraft, this constant theme of aliens waving at us, literally waving at us in any way they can to drop hints that they're here. And as you can see, this is Sir Alan Kamikaze, I think that's pronounced, who got sick and tired of the Americans and British and Australians in his area, and who pretend that they do not know of the UFO bases in the Solomon Isles. That's where it's going on, and he was not nice. He was not nice about this, that these UFOs were in that area. There was some sort of investigation going on, and he was not happy about it because these ETs are actually quite peaceful. They're quite peaceful, and they are monitoring things very closely indeed. And it bothers me a great deal that we have this narrative running of threat going on, and war, and taking the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower warned us about, one step further into space. And then, of course, we've got the extraordinary incidents. These there, ladies and gents, that there is all the incidents of the aliens that I've had. That one there is to do with Alec Newald. I don't know whether you can see it, but this one here, that one, is to do with Alec Newald. And what happened with Alec Newald was he was abducted in New Zealand, and this is interesting. He was abducted in New Zealand by some aliens in Auckland. He disappeared for 10 days, and then he was put back again. There's an indication that he didn't know where he was. He got a knock at the door from the Royal Institute of International Affairs, so he said, who wanted to impound his car due to the car being exposed to high electrical input. He doesn't know for the life of him how they knew this, but that's what happened. But this is the kicker. These aliens said to him that there's an area of research that is highly classified whereby not only do you have a soul, but you have a reverse side of you on, let's say, the antimatter matter cycle kind of wavelength modulates differently, and you can have a reverse side of you, a subconscious kind of being, a reverse side of you. It's very complex to explain, but I've seen it, and what is fascinating about that is that our lives can be traumatized, and you can see that trauma in people on that reverse cycle. And they were telling him, the aliens were telling him, that the world is ruled by a very dark force. It's a form of life that must be respected. And I was targeted by that force, and still am. And at 3, 4 in the morning in Southport, I was awoken to the most barbaric and cruelest visions you wouldn't believe. It's disturbing, but that's because it's all about, as the Veda text would say in India, it's all about the evolution of consciousness. It's all about evolvement, and there's a battle going on for humanity's consciousness not to evolve. We'd sooner have World War III. I'm not saying you would, but I'm saying that the powers out there that are very dark would sooner have this World War III than they would have us evolve into an area of consciousness. And so during this time, I kind of had this extraordinary Jacob's Ladder vision, and this feeling of peace and this feeling of the cosmos coming at me. And there we see the vision of Jacob's Ladder that they supplied me was directly linked to the UK. And this theme of Jacob's Ladder is in history, constantly. It's a ladder to another dimension because the UFOs are occupied in other dimensions. But if you use the concept of non-locality and consciousness, you can talk to them. And as you can see, there it is there, George Washington, Jacob's Ladder, UFO in the background, and of course in some of the ancient diagrams, Jacob's Ladder again, leading us into another dimension. There's an Italian astrophysicist who indicated that in some cases some of these civilizations are plasma beings, which the Indian government are fully aware of and did extensive research on, and some of them are plasma beings. That means that they resonate different to us, and life in the universe is also based on plasma. There are plasma beings out there, which is absolutely fascinating, who occupy higher dimensions, and that seems to be what the message was. And of course that's the warning as well. In 2014, at the height of my targeting, I received this first vision from them. That's very clearly the guy there who is, I would just say, been around me for a very long time, on and off. And I would just say that he's the equivalent of the police, the equivalent of judiciary. And there's an interesting thing there. That's the symbolic vision or warning that came to me in sleep in 2014 at the height of the Ukraine crisis, where they were signifying that we were at 5 to midnight with war and conflict, and we need to be a bit more back perhaps. Then there was the two triangles coming in, which I'll explain in the remote viewing section of my talk, and the field. Note the field, which I'll talk about in the remote viewing talk. These visions were quite extraordinary. These triangles have an artificial intelligence capacity which is absolutely incredible, and that was the warning from him. He was directing it at somebody, so if you can imagine my mind's eye, imagine him coming in and he's speaking to someone but the volume's turned off. He's actually speaking to a specific agency. He's actually speaking to a specific alien group, I suspect. They're confronting something that is nefarious. And if it wasn't for him, I think I'd be in the mental institution, frankly, but that's it. Now, he's a Nordic, drawn by my artist friend Peter Brennan. And what happened then is I went through this. The loss of my mother, a house move, and a major operation, and that's when they appeared. And they said they would appear in November, and ladies and gentlemen, I've just went through hell with it. I couldn't understand what the hell was going on, and I remember waking up from my operation, constantly being sick, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, being hit, targeted, and then all of a sudden you get this explosion in your awareness of the cosmos. And this lady, who's a Nordic ET, her name is Isa, and it's a Hebrew sounding name. Now you may think, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that you are, but you may think that, well, what's that got to do with anything, blah, blah, but the point is this. The point is there's a great cost in communicating that information. And the fact of the matter is the oppression of silence, which relates to Nazi Germany, what came through the back door to oppress this information, is present. So even me knowing her name, even me being the father to a daughter, so she said, all that lot, it comes at a great cost when you look at it in the background of what is going on, the nefarious, disgusting background of silence. In other words, there is an unwritten law that says you are not allowed to interact with them. And that's the situation. It's unwritten. You're not allowed to interact with them. But who made that law up is a great concern. And the concerns by these Nordics are raised under something called USAP, Unacknowledged Special Access Programs, which more or less means they're special operational programs to do with back-engineered technology and other nefarious goings-on, including mind control, to which our key decision makers are prevented from knowing about, and that gives them great cause for concern, it would appear. And the theme is, of course, communication. So there's the UFO again, signalling via an antenna. A scientist in Peru, who I was speaking to in Mexico, professor, indicated that might actually be a static discharge from the craft coming in. But there again it might not be, because it's highlighting a TV antenna. Secondly, that's it again coming in. That's a little dot of light there, and it comes in and it morphs itself and literally flies through my radio antenna and flies out again at the other side. That's because they're indicating communication. That's because they're hinting at who they are. They're very smart and very clever people. And of course, what we've got now is this. The Nordic ETs, they are blonde, blue-eyed aliens. They have always been around humanity. China classed them as an academic acknowledgement from China universities that they were in China. There's something called the Bangalore pipes, thousands of years old. It is rumoured that the Nordics used them to water their craft at the time. And what happens is that the Nordic, according to them, I've not made this up, but you couldn't make it up, but basically what this is derived from the contact with them. Now, according to these guys, the Nordic, they have a judiciary. That judiciary opposes what is going on at the moment, the harassment of contactees and the nefarious things that are going on. Because a high-tech civilization like them doesn't want nefarious in its backyard. It has enough to deal with. Everybody thinks that because they're aliens they might be more involved than us, but no, they have their share of problems as well. They've got a defence command and an exploration command as well, and they have a special operations command, it would appear. The special operations command is currently the one that's involved in affairs of Earth, and they are currently opposing something and trying to, it appears, communicate with the British government. This, ladies and gentlemen, is correct and accurate as I would know it, and it is what's going on in the skies above you at the moment. I don't make it up for glorification. I don't make it up for narcissism. I don't make it up because I think I'm the special ambassador. It's what is really going on. It's nearly cost me my life. That's kind of like an accurate picture. The thing is that her name, she called herself Izza, this female alien, and she had a surname that was Hebrew. Absolutely Hebrew in nature, like Israeli sounding surname. It sounded terrific, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was. And so, there we go. And then, of course, we have this situation going on from Germany, where I was speaking at a conference. Does anybody know about my phone call from Germany? Any of the audience sat here know that? No. Okay. I might not have told you about it when I was last here, I'm not sure. But basically what we've got is, that's a demonstration, as I say, of the technology that they have. So I believe that to be a triangle UFO, as seen over Belgium in 1990. My analysis friend Jason, who I recommend, Jason Gleaves, he thinks it's a civilian passenger jet. I don't. I think that's a triangle craft, and that orb-shaped craft has spun around at 360 and departed off at speed from it. It's in high velocity going in a separate direction, actually, rather than the same direction. So it's a demonstration. Now the thing is that these UFOs are artificially intelligent, and if you've looked on the internet at the moment, you'll see an artificially intelligent robot called Sophia. Have you seen her? Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is with that is I've contacted the head of the robotics company because I want to have a chat with her about the fact that these artificially intelligent UFO craft have a mind of their own. And in fact, the crew of these UFO craft refer to their ships not just as their ship, but as their beloved ship. It has a mind of its own. It thinks. It has a machine intelligence. Cut a long story short, during the course of my experiences, I interacted with it, and I saw that it yearned to know the cosmos. Artificial intelligence yearns to know the cosmos, yearns spirituality. Hence, when the Lord Krishna in the Indian Vedic text, or when you see him in there, Lord Krishna with his flute, it's actually an amazing metaphor for the celebration of all life, for divine power, for divine force, at any level, including artificially intelligent, to know life, to know the universe. And the artificially intelligent UFO was striving, in the incident I had, to know the cosmos, and it couldn't. It couldn't know it like we could as a matter of functional biological mind. It just couldn't. When you think out of the box on that, is there a possibility that AI therefore created a universe just to see what the results would be? There's a distinct possibility of that. That's why the artificial intelligent components of UFOs is so important. I would just add as well, you will see a lot of skywatches going on with CE5 and Dr. Gray and all that, but one of the secret aspects of communicating with UFOs is you don't telepathically contact the occupants, you speak to the UFO itself. In some cases you actually speak to the UFO itself because it's got its own artificial mind, it'll hear you. And that can yield some fascinating results. It's an unorthodox approach to contacting UFOs, but there you go. So what happened was, got a phone call from this guy after giving a talk at Watford. He rang up and claimed that he was from the German Defence Intelligence Organisation, and he said that he was in a cafe in Frankfurt. My name is Klaus, I'm from a cafe in Frankfurt. It was quite odd, we're above a cafe. Come and look us up. Which I found extremely comical. But then he proceeded to tell me that he was part of Germany's constitution for defence of the Constitution. And he started asking me questions about my interaction with Nordic aliens, their AI triangle. The craft speak, they're artificially intelligent, they're air, sea, space capable, and most of our space agencies lag behind. When we get into the Indian stuff, there's also other races going on, hidden races that are not necessarily weapons races, but are races in technology to discover things based on UFO information. And India actually leads the way in that area, definitely leads the way. And this caused as well the other thing which happened, which was fascinating. Last night, Dave was, we were doing a séance. You were doing a séance, weren't you?
It was a meditation.
Meditation. And I was doing my Krishna consciousness thing. I was trying to just contact the higher realms there. I was sat there. I heard a few things. I've had some clairaudient incidents in my time. But what was happening is I was being targeted after the death of my mother. So I hope we're getting the emphasis that as I sit and talk to you, this is not just fantasist waffle. It's come, and I don't think you think that, but it's come at a great cost to me. And what happened was I was collapsing with mental exhaustion. My legs were going from me. I couldn't cope. I'd lost my mother. I'd been operated on. I'd lost the house I'd lived in. I had to move. All a lot for a man to handle. And what happened is that a contactee in the United States said, I am going to speak to those I am in contact with, and I am going to get them to assist you. And by fascination, 2 o'clock one Tuesday afternoon, when I was crippled on the bed, I closed my eyes to discover that lady, an accurate drawing of her, absolutely gorgeous, turning up. And it was at that point they'd come in over the Marine Lake at Southport, as well as 3 pink lights on a triangle, got it for about 5 seconds, and it disappeared. They turned up and they indicated to me that they would cure me, help me with my mental exhaustion, that because they were aliens with advanced technology, sometimes they didn't know what was going on equal to human beings. And she was from Arcturus, she told me. That's the emerald green UFO that she was in, coming in over Southport on the way. Me and my mate are off to the off licence. By the way, I don't drink, but he wanted some tins. I was sober. In she comes. Beautiful green emerald UFO, whammo, comes in, hovers, and then takes off at speed to my right, indicating that they were there. They've been there, and they've been watching over me for quite a long time now, because if they hadn't have done, I think I would be dead, frankly. That's the way it is. That's how close it is. And that really, you know, brings us to India. So I've given you a background of updates, really, as to what has happened to me. My interactions with them are real. They are happening. I am targeted. Every day is a bonus. I don't know how long my life expectancy is now because of all that's gone on. That is quite bad, actually, but I'm being as realistic as I can with you. I won't bullshit and I won't embellish, just tell you like it is. And that brings us to India and UFOs, a journey. And I just feel the need just to have a quick reset of my batteries. Would that be alright, just for a quick 5-minute break? Thank you very much, everyone, for your support. I find you a very, I speak all across the country, and I find you a very relaxed group of people who seem to be taking it all in your stride and all that. And that's good for me.
Tony, there's no group like True Seekers, though.
Well, this isn't it, that's it. And I've got to say that if we were to do, if I was a speaker and we had to do, all the speakers got together and rated each venue in terms of, I think this would be the 5-star one, because you really are looked after with meals and fish and chips and God.
Didn't we, Tony?
You what, pal?
We're on a date.
Yes, we're on a date. We had a date last night. We didn't we? Anyway, don't talk about that. Yeah, so I was just talking. Do you know, mate? I forgot your name, pal.
Kevin.
Kevin raises a very important point about people under mind control. This is very important. I want to say it. There is a lack of spine among law enforcement to not accept this as going on. It is going on. We are targeted. We have been targeted. This effing clown here with his circus running riot with his mind control. I called him Dr. Strangelove. And of course, at the early days, what they were trying to do was they were trying to find out why I was having interaction with UFOs. I've got whole journals at home of what they were doing to me. But as Kevin has rightly pointed out, if you come out with this in the public domain, you are at risk of being sectioned. You are at risk of getting psychiatric treatment, because the Statistical Manual DSV, I think it's DSV, Mental Health Disorders, indicates that this kind of material is the work of the paranoid fantasist. This kind of material, this is the kicker, there is no mental health diagnostic or condition for anybody suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, or what I've probably got, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, from the effects of that frigging idiot there with his mind control circus, to which is even more troubling, he will have 100% cover-up and backup. It won't be the knowledge of this in the public domain is not reflected on as doing something wrong on their part. It's classed as a breach of security. they don't want this information revealing in the public domain, that they're capable of waking up a tax-paying citizen at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with mind-invading technology, and it's an absolute scandal. And quite intentionally it's omitted from the mental health manual, because if you look at the False Memory Syndrome Foundation and MK Ultra, you will find members of the CIA got on the board of the False Memory Foundation to cover ass so that it wasn't revealed what they were doing. So therefore, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm under mind control," "Oh, they're waking me, they're beaming voices into my head," and blah and blah, there's no mental health diagnostic for that. It doesn't exist. It's the work of fantasy, and yet the technology is patented and documented, and I'm a victim of it. And so a stand needs to be made. It really does. And so you're running that risk as well. You really are. Kevin raises a very important point. There's an article on the internet by Carol Smith about this very thing. A psychologist who stuck her neck out and said literally that is what is going on, which it is. And as well, it's to do with consciousness. At some level, it's to do with the control of consciousness. If you look in the Bhagavad Gita with Lord Krishna there and his flute, Lord Ganesh with his mouse, it's all symbolic. It's to do with an involvement and evolution of consciousness to which, if there is a force ruling the planet that has navigated the human race into conflict, the last thing it wants is a humanity in transcendent consciousness. That's the last thing it wants. But there again, India, their mathematicians and a secret think tank worked out with mathematically, and the maths held up according to the report I read, the maths held up that humanity was capable of transcending to another dimension quite easily, and the mathematics worked out. And I'll explain all that in a minute. So India UFOs and a journey. Right. This is, for example, India's government have probably a bigger black operational project going on than the American government, because they've got all the ancient texts, so they understand what was going on. For example, their flying machines have 32 secrets attached to them. 32 secrets of technology that's in the ancient texts of India. And as we can see here, one of the things that the Indian media comments on, you see, I was doing a radio programme for a Liverpool radio station, and we ended up discovering a load of data in the Indian press that was dumped, I do believe, by an agency similar to, I don't know, similar to Majestic. And it was dumped in the Indian press, all sorts of information. It's now no longer online. These articles have been removed. However, I've got them with me. I'll come to that later. You can obtain them from me. Right. So what they were talking about here in one of these in the Indian press was this: that there was a UFO. That's an old image because I couldn't find the current one. There was a UFO that was shot down over Vietnam, and this secret Indian think tank ticked these boxes here. That the UFO is a drone. It transmits information about Earth to advanced ETs. This is the kicker: biologically intelligent, fixes own problems, capable of reproduction. According to the situation I faced from what they were telling me, some of these artificially intelligent UFOs can wander off on their own accord, a bit like a Windows operating system crashing. It just goes off and does its own thing. And they are recognisable by a Type 0 race. So there's Type 2, which is civilizations that can control the weather. I think Type 1 that is, Type 2, and then the Type 3 civilization is when you get to the area of God Almighty and creation. And the Indian research was very accurate on this. They believe that humanity is an emission of a Type 3 civilization, and in fact we are a hologram. They conclude this from extensive research, which was truly remarkable. So India's UFO agency knew that the NASA missions were being well monitored and observed and chased by strange UFOs, and international researchers were convinced that they're not harmful, which is correct. They're not harmful, but there is it's quite a duality. There is hybrid threats going on, but the trouble lies with Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech, where he twigged what was going on. When I interviewed his great-granddaughter for my radio show, she indicated that Eisenhower had 2 heart attacks, or possibly 1, due to the shock of knowing what was going on behind the scenes with the UFO phenomenon, hence him saying that the public must be aware, must be alert and suspicious of the military-industrial conflict. And of course, there is a demonstration, by the way. What I failed to mention was this, that this lady indicated to me, which I found fascinating, that she came from the oceans of a parallel universe. So they were using our ocean bases, but came from an ocean in another universe, from another planet. In fact, I had a very strange vision this morning, and what I've got to do is something I've missed out. There we go, back to these guys. Only last week or 2 weeks ago, I had communication with them, and they indicated to me that I was going to film them again, so I know the location where I'm going to film them. And what was fascinating was the incident of non-locality that happened, because in the Vedic texts in India it talks all about non-locality and the communication of the mind. And what happened is that I was asleep, and in they come. I'm fast asleep, I can hear them coming in. They told me they were here, they told me when they were going to turn up, not when, sorry, but where. And they started communicating with other people who I knew via their subconscious mind. You could hear the dialogue going on. We'll talk about this later in remote viewing, but you could definitely hear the dialogue going on between them. That at one point they told me that they were coming from bases on the coast of South America. At another point they were chatting to somebody who I knew because they liked what he was doing with his family, and they said hello to him. And this is all happening at 2 and 3 in the morning when people are asleep, because non-locality is where it's at with communication with ET. And the Vedas text, the ancient Indian text, knew this. They definitely knew it. And as we can see, all roads of information regarding UFOs actually lead to India. A mysterious funding came to look into UFO matters at Delhi University, and the info was taken off the internet, and there's been an official denial, but India has a fascinating thing to tell regarding UFOs. One of the political parties, the PJB in India, indicated that it would disclose the UFO phenomena if it came to power. It opposed an international cabal that was controlling information. That international cabal has its tentacles in Nazi Germany and Operation Paperclip. But this political party in India was indicating that they would raise hell and try and disclose what was going on to the world. And as I say, that's my first vision in Hindu. It was Hindu in nature. I was 2 years of age when it happened, and it's the elephants crashing through the wall, trumpeting, and that's my father trying to tell me that, that nothing was there. I'm 2 years of age, and I actually cut my lip, because I'm terrified, what the hell's going on? Cut my lip, blood everywhere, Dad's trying to calm me down, and this vision has haunted me for 40 years. And they reference it. They constantly go back to this vision in the early ages of me, because I managed to trace my bloodline, and it would appear that we are related to the Sinclair family. My bloodline is related to some very strange things, possibly including the Ganesh bloodline, which is in India currently, is a real bloodline, and it would appear that the people who are relatives of this Hindu god are highly placed people in India's medical industry. They're doctors, they're surgeons, and somehow, I've forgotten the family name, but it is related to that bloodline. You will find that, as I said earlier, I think I mentioned the elephant ears, very important metaphor, very indeed, and here we go. So, it's a gateway to non-locality, and what we were doing last night was we were having a demonstration with the table, and as I said to them last night, they needn't have done the table. They could have actually done away with the table and just sat and listened and listened and listened, because Lord Ganesh has ears to listen, because he listens in non-locality. And that can mean if you're listening in non-locality, you're listening to people's subconscious. Not only are you listening to people's subconscious, you're listening to deceased subconscious as well. So you'll hear the dead coming in. You'll hear clairaudience coming in at a very high rate of knots. He has a small, Lord Ganesh in that vision, he has large ears. He listens subliminally. He listens transdimensionally. He has small eyes because he has a small, large, and he has big ears to listen more, and he has small eyes and a big head to think big, and he has a mouse. That's very important, the metaphor of the mouse. Mouse means that because you're in a higher state of transcendent consciousness and you're enlightened, believe me, that's no easy boast, that's not easy. You can have a mouse. In other words, you can have urges that can run away with you, including mind control, where they can target certain areas of your mind to have out-of-control emotions that can run riot with you. And Lord Ganesh, the symbolism of that is his mouse. So he has this little mouse that can sometimes occasionally run riot, and he needs to bring it under control. But for me, the ears are the most fascinating. And as I said there, India's UFO agency concluded that the maths hold up to transcend mankind into a higher dimension. When we are listening with big ears in the subconscious realms, it appears that the consciousness is modulated across all creation. We can hear it. Hence this, could you just the articles that are no longer on the internet are present on those CDs as well, because I stored them, I saved them from a few years back. They're not on the internet anymore, but they are fascinating, explaining the UFO situation, explaining interaction with the UFOs at a very advanced level, and they were taken off the internet. But China and India governments do not, they have a no-go area into the area of Ladakh and the Himalayas. There is a no-go area. Their military dare not go in there, and it's odd to say that Alexander the Great was confronted by UFOs. The Indian army was there to greet Alexander. He never proceeded into India. He never proceeded into India because the UFOs were quite present, and they are active in the Himalayas actually. That's where one of their bases are. That was in 329 BC. And there are 27 types of ghost in India. I was going to list them, but it freaks me out. There's one particular ghost that I can't remember the name of, but there's images of it online, which it really disturbs me. In villages in India, there's a certain type of ghost that's half dead and half alive. It's recovered from being dead, and it's wandering round the villages aimlessly. And there's a couple of photos online of one of these type of ghosts in somebody's house, just casually wandering through. Quite bizarre. There's some types of ghosts that we've got in India. There's 27 in total, which I find fascinating. Only India can do this. We've got a Petni, which is a female ghost that died unmarried with desires. You will find that there's a Naira, or a nail bar, I think that is, and that's a man who has died. There's a man hunting female ghosts, and a Bahut, or a restless ghost. And there, of course, is the images of the one wandering round aimlessly that's half dead and half alive, which is quite freaky. There are lots of reincarnation incidents in India, whereby you'll have a little girl or a little boy suddenly telling his parents, I was that person, and he goes precisely to the grave of who he once was. And we've got the mysterious green lights. They're like will-o'-the-wisp in the jungles of India, these marvellous green-looking lights. And we understand that they can lure people to their doom. The mysterious hill in Ladakh, which is magnetic, whereby Ladakh is an interesting case there. The mysterious hill in Ladakh whereby the car is uphill, but the hill's magnetic, so the car travels uphill, not downhill but uphill, which is an absolute mystery. It would appear, some say it's based on optical illusion, that the hill looks upwards when in fact it's downwards. The mysterious cases of sonic booms in India as well, whereby you had these big sonic booms going off in certain regions of India and nobody knew what they were. In fact, they were reported worldwide, actually, as a worldwide phenomenon. It was quite unbelievable what it was, and they still don't know the cause to this day. And the 27 types of ghosts are absolutely remarkable, and that includes orbs as well. They're classed as a form of ghost in India. They're just some paranormal trivia for you there. And Indira Gandhi said in 1970 that India must research foreign technologies that were part of Hindu mythologies, like Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata has about, I think, 32 volumes dedicated to the demonic and knowing the demonic. So you can see that the Indian government really do know their stuff on this. They'll have looked into it. And the other thing as well, they were part of Hinduism. India must research forgotten technologies. But that also, if you change forgotten and add foreign, foreign means alien as well. These governments, when they talk of foreign technology acquisition, may possibly be talking about alien. It's the term that they use, the US Army used it, and so on and so forth. We've also got that they also, as I say, we were looking online for the radio station to do with information that was in the Indian press that mysteriously disappeared, but I kept it. And that had all kinds of fascinating things about it. It has a fascinating tale to tell. So India's black projects is a very serious business. They understand ET technology, and they understand it well. They really do, as well as their remote viewing, which we'll do later. The remote viewing one is actually based on India have got the equivalent of MI6, which is called RAW, the Research and Analysis Wing, and they do a lot of work in terms of remote viewing. They are very good at it, and they've had various results, and that's an image of a UFO that was taken over India that caused hell on in the Indian Parliament. Absolute hell on. Their soldiers have also had up in the Himalayas confrontations with ghosts. India is a real paranormal place to be. It really is. And this is the mysterious report of the Vyama. In Russia, this is by they indicated that Russia SVR, which is the Foreign Intelligence Agency of Russia, indicated that there was a Vyama entrapped in a time well, It's caused the disappearance, so it was said, of at least 8 American soldiers, because the Vyama technology was very, very advanced indeed. It's a cave, but they said it was hidden in a cave for the estimated 5,000 years, but it had this strange energy about it, and anybody who went near it was sure to come a cropper with it. So the US, so the story goes, asked Russia for help, and the incident happened with the Vyama, and a Hind 24 helicopter attempted to lift it out of the cave for back engineering purposes. In fact, India, as I'll come to later, actually has its own back engineered operation that it did, researching Vyama craft to develop them into aircraft. They were looking at it very closely. And it is said that there was a flash and the helo blew up because the Vyama has some type of counter-defence. Actually, the Vyama has 32 secrets to it that was written in the Indian ancient text about what it could do and what it could do, showing aspects of a very advanced technology that we have yet to master, even back then. Very advanced technologies. So India looks to the sacred text for black technology projects, and it looked at something called, there was a document, a report, called the Vyamankya Shastra, rediscovered, and it was a report that this was the Indian Air Force actually. There was Project Blue Book, there was a few other ones that they did, the American government did Project Blue Book and a load of other projects, but India did their own, and it was called this, the Vyamankya Shastra rediscovered. What they did, the Indian Air Force, is they looked at the ancient Vyama, and they looked at how it might fly, and they looked at aerodynamic techniques, and they published it in a report, and they'd even said, in India's text back then, India's text said that these Vyamas could, it was in the Vedic text, travel, these Vyamas, those that travel from place to place, those that travel from one country to another country, and those that travel between planets. There's even the strange dialogue in China of somebody going to another planet in Chinese documents as well. In fact, China had one of the first star maps. I'll have to look up the name of it, but China actually had one of the first star maps ever done in God knows what BC. I'll have to look that up. But it is because the Nordics were active in China, the Nordic aliens were active in China, there's a possibility that they did have a star map. That would be of no coincidence whatsoever. And in fact, when the Zulu nation first clamped their eyes on, well, the first people they ever saw, the Zulu nation, were Nordic ETs, blonde, blue-eyed people from Andromeda. Those were the first people that they saw, and it is rumoured that when they saw the Western European male, they thought they were aliens as well, because they'd never seen a human being. So they thought they were from the stars, which they weren't. They were from Europe, and they were termed Wazugu. The Nordics by the Zulus were termed Wazugu, you see. So there we go. So what this report discovered, it was published in June 2001, and it was a project study conducted by Wing Commander MP Rao of the Aeronautical Society of India on behalf of its Aerospace Information Panel. They were wanting to look at ancient text, they were wanting to look at how the Vyama flied. This is in contrary to the fascinating story of Maria Osric, I think it's pronounced, the Fuel Society in Germany, who literally channeled a UFO, a drawings of UFOs, and stuck it to the German High Command, and the German High Command looked at this and said, yeah, this is legitimate, this is actually a UFO, it would be able to fly, and therefore they designed these UFOs, the German government. Some of them's quite disturbing. There's one called the Field Free or something like that, and it's a UFO, and it's got a little glass bulb under it, 3 glass bulbs under it, big glass domes under it. What is shocking about that is when I was going to Estrick with my friend, going to York to set up the market stall, there was this sudden appearance of a UFO that looked like a triangle. No, it didn't look like a triangle. What did it look like? It just looked like a flying wing with a great big glass dome under it. And it flew at tremendous speed, appeared out of nowhere, flew at tremendous speed, and then flew off again. And it was similar to something that came over the Marine Lake last week in Southport, a far smaller version of it, with the bulb underneath it. So you've got this format of this German, Nazi Germany technology wandering around, possibly from Antarctica, where they went to. There's an interesting story in Antarctica of the British. Has anybody heard of Operation Taliban at all? Operation Taliban, yeah?
Yes.
Taliban, okay.
Yes.
Not Taliban. Is it Taliban? It's the Antarctica British operation.
Yes.
High jump.
High jump.
No, not high jump. I've forgotten the name of it.
Was that Admiral Byrd?
No, it's not Admiral Byrd. No, what it was. We know that from Antarctica, we know that the German High Commander, the German Navy, went to Antarctica under Paul Bormann, I think it was. They took millions of pounds and a whole submarine fleet up to Antarctica. The story is that the, my God, the name will come to me in a minute. The story is that the British Special Boat Squadron were put on alert because a squadron of Marines had gone missing. It might be Operation Tabalan. A squadron of Marines had gone missing in Antarctica, and it was deemed that they were missing, and they had to find them. So this guy who said this, and by the way, the guy who interviewed him, he didn't change his story over 10 years. The British went to Antarctica to discover what was Nazi bases, to discover also this kind of situation going on with something called polar men.
Yeah.
They had reason to believe that the Marine squadron was murdered by these polar men, and this SBS veteran was commenting on how his unit had a confrontation with what could be called the abominable snowman coming at them. They saw these Nazi bases and submarines parked there, and it came as a great shock to them what was going on, and they managed to get out alive. But that Operation Tabalan, I think it's what it's called, was the first operation before high jump. So the British were in Antarctica before Operation High Jump. And what is disturbing to me is some of these UFOs have these domes under them, glass domes that are similar to the technology of Nazi Germany UFOs that we would see in World War II. There is a rumour that says that Antarctica is an unacknowledged nation, an unacknowledged country. There is that strain of thinking as well. But I digress. But the Vyama, 32 operational secrets. There's too many to mention, but I find these fascinating. They had the Parashaba Gazraka, I think that's pronounced, which was a listening system to hear enemy pilots, even in them days. They had the Rupakashana, which was a form of television, and then they had that there, the Diprara Shana, turning the key in the Vyama to show direction of enemy plane on screen. All thousands of years ago, this technology, I mean, there's evidence as well in India of, must have been about 32,000 years old, in caves, prehistoric caves, of people in UFOs, people in space suits and oxygen masks, already wandering around India. And the Himalayas as well. There's actually a story, so there's also the story in India of 9 unknown men. Has anybody heard of them? 9 unknown men is the equivalent of the Indian Illuminati. The 9 unknown men is the name of the secret society that was created in 270 BC. There's 9 books. The titles of them are not fantastic, but there's 9 books. And the story goes that after the Kalinga War, Emperor Ashkar understood that the extent of damage to the world, so he knew that conflict, there would be an extension of damage to our world. This theme is constantly mirrored by extraterrestrials in their UFOs as to where Britain, America and Russia might be heading for. I've had disturbing psychic visions of it. They are continuing to warn our governments of the threat of all this going on. But it seems our governments are just absolutely blindsided to all this. But it doesn't help when you've got US senators being told that there's a threat in deep space while avoiding the real issues, which are consciousness of mankind is controlled for nefarious reasons. The Indian text knew this, they studied it very clearly, and as we can see, so the 9 unknown men, there was books on anti-gravity, books on sociology, and what is interesting is if you look online on the Russian remote viewing website called New Cosmology, the Russians developed remote viewing at an extended rate under something called Troop 10,003. I'll come to that in the remote viewing course that we're going to do next. But what happened is on their website they also had something very Machiavellian, an ancient text as well, which is called Testaments of World Rulers. It's a Babylonian text, it's a very ancient text, and it states very clearly in these texts how to rule and control a population. So even back then, we had all sorts going on, and if you go to newcosmology.com, you will see the actual Testament of World Rulers, the actual document, the actual page of it. It's quite a fascinating document from the Russian remote viewing website. So it is said that the first aircraft was built in India. The Wright brothers did not invent the first aircraft. This guy did, Shivaka Talpade. It was an unmanned plane in 1895, and it relied on ancient plans. That's the drawing done in 1923 from the Vyama text. Nazi Germany was doing drawings of UFOs from channeling, believed to be from the Aldebaran star system this lady was using. She said to her generals that the length of her hair was the antenna for channeling this information. She obviously hadn't studied the Vedic texts of India, which would have told her that it's based on non-locality and consciousness, which is certainly what it is, based on non-locality and consciousness. And as we can see, it is possible that India is being watched by extraterrestrials. India is possibly speaking to them as well. And there are no god areas in the higher gods area in the Himalayas in Ladakh. There's the hilarious story of a garage owner in Ladakh. I read this in the Indian press, who was telling the Indian reporter that he had a valve television that hadn't worked for years in the corner of his garage. He said that he was astounded that the television came on. There was an alien on it who spoke in Hindi, who indicated that they were flying around the area. Please do not be disturbed by us. You do not need to be disturbed by us. We're in the area, blah, blah. And off the screen went, which has puzzled him forever since. I want to find that garage and speak to the garage owner. But India has given the UFO matter some considerable thought, and that there is an equivalence of the Vyama. That's the TR-3B. Once again, powered by Mercury. So a TR-3B is powered by Mercury, spun at high speed. The Germans developed SS Brotherhood of the Bell, great big testing platform here to this day in Belgium, where they spun Mercury at absolute speed to give anti-gravity and lift properties. Does anybody know that one?
No.
No, you didn't know that. Yeah, Mercury at speed giving lift property. We can see here that India was being visited from other planets from 4000 BC, and the variety of flying machines and science fiction weapons is astounding, which it is. There's rumour in some of the Indian rocks that there's indication of radiation where they've possibly detonated a nuclear weapon at some point in the proceedings, that they had nuclear technology. So we're looking at some type of civilization that was very advanced in India and possibly using weapons, science fiction weapons of all kinds. There was something in the Vyama where it could actually, using, was it pomegranates and some of the chemicals, a chemical gas, so they were using germ warfare as well, which is absolutely ghastly, frankly. And from the ancient records, as we can see, it goes back to the theme of Mercury. There we go. It says there, inside one must put the Mercury engine with its iron heating apparatus underneath. This is from ancient records. The Germans, what they did is they took this, and the Americans as well, and they spun that at speed in a triangle full of mercury. It develops a lift property. It starts to lift, spun at high speed. And the Indians knew this. Perhaps there's a possibility that Germany and America were onto this mercury issue because they got it from these texts. So it was put by an iron heating apparatus underneath. When the guy who developed the first plane in India tried it, his plane crashed because he didn't quite follow the plans correctly, it would appear. But it sets the driving whirlwind in motion. On the TR-3B it sets the rotator in motion and up the craft lifts. And the movements of the Vyama are such that it can vertically ascend, vertically descend, move slanting forwards and backwards with the help of the machines. These human beings can fly in the air and heavenly beings can come down to the earth. What is fascinating is that they could develop listening devices so that they could hear other pilots, and that's from ancient records. Fascinating as well that they developed a radar system as well within that machine. That's the machine that I think was done in 1923 that took off but unfortunately crashed, using powered mercury for lift capability. So what we can see here is that there is the existence of UFOs and non-locality. That's a plasma type UFO. I believe it belongs to the maritime beings. I believe it belongs to the lady who's been with me for a very long time, and it's to do with consciousness and non-locality. Just have 3 people step up to the front. I just want to demonstrate something. Just 3 people, just to the front here. That would be great.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Yeah, anyone. Don't be shy. It's just to demonstrate. Just to demonstrate non-locality and how it might work.
Only 2, yeah.
Only 2. Anybody else? Just come up, mate. I'll just demonstrate something. Maybe boring. Yeah.
I'm nominating
one more.
Oh,
Face
yeah,
the audience,
Kevin.
lads. That'll be great. I've
You know
done
you're
this
not shy.
demonstration before. Let's just think, right, now we're going to explain this. I'm
Just
going to
make sure
explain primitively, very primitive, and this will be in the Vedic text as well. I'm going to explain non-locality, consciousness, time travel. Time travel is based on consciousness and non-locality, and this is what can happen. If you just step forward, sir, just there, and let's just imagine he's in the year 2150, and let's say this is the year 2019, just step forward. That's it. And let us just say that this guy here is a Nordic alien, one of the advanced star nations, who knows that there's a time distance of years between these two guys, but because they are conscious, communicating with each other, non-locality, as in the distance between time, collapses. He's from the Andromeda Galaxy, which is, I think, over 37 million light years away, but because we're using non-locality, the distance of time collapses, and they begin to communicate with each other. That's why this guy here, who is 37 million light years away, can communicate with me in 2019 because of the time collapse. There's no distance in time in consciousness. And therefore, this guy in the years ahead looks at my work in the past, which is causing a miasmatic paradox, as in I have sown, I reap into the future, and his non-locality and consciousness comes to visit me, and he has a chat with me. We're time travelling, we're interacting, and then he turns to him, and they interact, and this technology base is at a level to communicate with him, and a disclosure starts to happen. That's how disclosure does happen. They're all talking about UFO disclosure at the moment. It's 150, 120 years off using this principle. So that just demonstrates how non-locality might work and communication with ET might work. For example, there's no distance between me, Tony Topping, for example, and the Nordic alien. There will be no distance between us. Even better if he's in the Himalayas or at a base somewhere, because of telepathy and consciousness and quantum mechanics. There's no distance between time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I just thought that just demonstrates very easily what's going on. And these plasma UFOs, India knows about them. India's UFO research believes that they are a form of life, which they are. Under Project Hesderland, for example, there was an Italian astrophysicist who indicated that he believed, what he was studying, these strange lights in Norway, called Project Hesderland, he believed he was looking at an advanced civilization who could control plasma like we could control DNA, and that's an example of one of their craft flying up near me at an actual conference before I give a speech. Quite amazing, I'm sure you would agree. And then of course there's India. India's Area 51. Now India's Area 51 is called the Kongola Pass, just reading from my notes here, and India has had a number of listening stations around the world. You'll be surprised how many listening stations India has in terms for gathering intelligence. China has encircled India with what's known as a call it a string of flowers. China calls this encirclement of India with its listening stations as military as a string of flowers. But India, not being stupid, they decided to surround China with a string of pearls, as they called it. Their listening stations are all over the world. They have a high level number of them. And that means to say that probably India has certainly developed technology to actually detect that kind of UFO. In fact, according to Indian research, that type of UFO, when it comes in, with it being plasma, will trigger a sonic boom as soon as it comes in, a very mild one. So what I did is I checked the date of that photo, just had a check of it, and I discovered that, well actually no, it wasn't that photo. Let me go back, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't that photo I was looking at, it was this one. Hang on. So I believe, in my humble opinion, that this lady is from another universe, from the oceans. That's a plasma UFO. She's a plasma type being, and I believe that that UFO, appearing as it did, would have generated a small sonic boom as per the Indian research data. When I checked the seismic data on the UK database for any sonic booms over Yorkshire at that time, unfortunately there was no indication. But I just thought it was fascinating that we could actually look into that. India knows that is what's going on. They're plasma entities, plasma beings, plasma life, but it's being kept secret. It certainly is being kept as a cover-up. I found it absolutely fascinating. Let's move forward. So we've demonstrated there the consciousness and non-locality. That's where it happens. It's in the Vedas. It's also in Persian folklore. Ancient Persian folklore describes non-locality and consciousness as well, and the ancient texts clearly understand that. That's taken in Lindisfarne before I give a talk. I'm just about to go in and they appear, and Jason Gleaves has taken a photo of the UFO just coming in there, as we can see. And Kongola Pass is India's Area 51. There's been a variety of UFOs seen in the area. Every area has an Area 51, including America. And of course there's this big hoo-ha at the moment regarding the storming of Area 51. There were a lot of people heard of that one.
Yeah.
29th of September I think that is, where they're going to storm Area 51 because of the because they want to know if there are aliens there. In the early days when I set this up, my ET Life page, in the early days I was getting visits from China Lake Naval Facility. It is rumoured that the aliens at Area 51 are actually located at Area S4, so the rumour has it. This is a fawn in America's side, Area 51, and I can't talk about it no further. It's at a certain level for a contact experiencer. It is not safe, believe me, not safe to talk about at a contact experiencer level. If you're a person having interaction with these beings, it's just not safe to talk about that area, Area 51. But definitely, Congo La Pass, Area 51, UFOs seen in the area. It's a no-go area for China's military and India's military, and it coincides with an incident that happened in France in 1960, where a farmer was abducted by Nordic aliens who had bases in the Himalayas. During my nearly 10 years subtle interaction with Nordic ETs, they've indicated to me that they have bases in the Himalayas. The guy was taken from his farmer's field in 1960, taken to a base by the Nordic ETs to the Himalayas. It is indicated that he was shown forms of yoga by them, shown forms of meditation by them, and he was brought back. There was an incident, so according to the witness in the UFO, it was a triangle UFO actually that brought him back to France, and a Dassault Mirage aircraft intercepted the UFO, according to the witness. This correlates, it would appear, with an actual report of a Dassault Mirage intercepting a UFO. So we can clearly see that each country, Russia has its own Area 51, China will have its own Area 51. These are secretive areas, and it's all to do with a hidden race to develop a technological base that is, I would cynically say, even better at killing and destroying each other than it ever was before. There's no, for example, Tom DeLonge and his To the Stars Academy, there's stuff there with technology, gets us here in 10 minutes, gets us there in 20 minutes. Nothing about our oceans being saved, nothing about saving whales or dolphins and the environmental impact that we have on our Earth. These aliens know this, and they monitor it very clearly, and the Indian government carefully monitors it as well. Ladakh is the alien zone, and according to a senior official in the Indian government, paranormal activities are happening within the knowledge of the Indian Army. The Indian Army, there are areas that they won't go into, and they just block it for security reasons because there are bases in that area, you see. Definitely bases. And that's similar to this fascinating story of tall whites in Area 12. In Charles Hall's Millennial Hospitality book series, he describes his encounter with a race of human-like extraterrestrials which are called tall whites. I believe that the lady I met was similar to a tall white because she was showing... What was prevalent with the tall whites is they show a prevalence for their children and looking after their children and educating their children appears to be a big thing with these aliens. They are very committed to that. That appears to be going on with them, and that's an actual photo of the possible base of what is known as White Zone Area 12. Now, if you've got these aliens and one party is doing one thing towards humanity and another party is doing another thing towards humanity, one positive, one negative, you're going to have an alien Cold War on your hands, which is exactly what is going on at the moment. There is an alien Cold War going on at the moment. That some of these alien groups do not like each other, a bit like Russia and America. That is really going on behind the scenes. That's a close examination of the tall white Area 12 entrance there, allegedly where they are. They've been within those areas for a very long time. I do believe these people to be real, tall white aliens, I believe them to exist. And that's the typical UFO over India. So you've got the triangle type UFO, you've got the orbs, you've got all kinds of UFOs coming in and coming out. There was a big hoo-ha because somebody filmed a great big UFO coming in through the clouds over India because they've got bases there within the Himalayas, you see. That's the situation going on in India. They've got bases there within the Himalayas, and there's been sightings in 2003, sightings in 1951. There was actually a UFO landing in 1947 when India declared independence. The occupants came out of the UFO, went to have a word with the villagers there. So if you look at the Peruvian press, the Indian press, interaction with UFOs is all quite routinely going on. And the thing is what is interesting is we seem to be, mathematically as well, they had worked out, this think tank had worked out the complexities of life after death. the mathematical complexities, according to this Indian think tank, are going down the tunnel of light. The quantum physics of it are quite astounding when we pass over. It's as if we're going into a 0-point vacuum. It's as if we're being controlled by some sort of artificial simulation that's of a higher intelligence. And they kind of worked out mathematically the complexity of it. And brief articles are on the CD there. Absolutely fascinating. And India, of course, has the underground bases. This has caused chaos with India. This has deeply worried the Indian government that there's UFOs in underground bases all around the world, of course, but also in India because it affects the kind of the interaction affects the tectonic plates. I believe that UFO that I filmed there, which was a green emerald UFO, I believe that comes from a base in that area. I believe that that is actually in a base in that area. She took off at tremendous speed. That's taken over Southport this year in March. She came in at tremendous speed to have a look at me. That was probably to prevent me from collapsing with exhaustion. This is the constant thing that they do with me. They keep coming in to make sure I'm not keeling over with exhaustion, because it can happen, because you're targeted, you see. These UFO bases are deep underground because the UFO crafts need to be close to the mantle of the Earth for servicing. And these crafts can't be done in that they have to be done in an electromagnetic environment only. I would suspect that there's some sort of highly secretive liaison going on with the Indian government. And let me just go back and point something out to you. I would also suspect as well that this guy, hang on, where are we? Vision, comparison. Yeah. I also suspect that with the German government as well, there is something going on with them that's panicked them. I have reason to suspect that world leaders, based on the principle of non-locality and consciousness, I have reason to suspect that world leaders, when they sleep, are being talked to by these ETs. Because, for example, President Trump would have no Secret Service protection from any of this. They can't protect his mind. There was an article done by the US Air Force many years ago called "The Mind Has No Firewall," which was an indication that the human mind does indeed has no protection whatsoever against this type of technology. So it is my belief that the German Chancellor was spoken to by them. It's my belief that world leaders actually know that this is going on, and for some reason we are being signalled to prevent a nuclear war. I think that there's a lot of that going on. And of course, it goes to this. This is where it's at, where we've got this kind of, the secret race which is called flash travel. This is about travelling in great distances, and it's called flash travel. And this is what they're all currently working on at the moment. It's the hidden secret race to which the Indian government, the Chinese government, the Indian government are very concerned that the Chinese government are developing this technology. So there's always this military edge going on with it all. There definitely is. And they've tracked them as well. The Indian government has literally tracked these UFOs, and in some cases these UFOs will appear in two places at once. That's happened to me, where they've appeared in two places at once, where they've passed each other, where they've got out the way of aircraft suddenly, and they've kind of like passed each other at speed and then disappeared suddenly as well. So these aircraft can actually, these UFOs can be in two places at once. They can translocate, which is, and the Indian UFO people have been tracking them. More importantly, it will be interesting to get some sort of sonic sound recorder to just check if when one of these UFOs appears, which I believe happens, that a sonic boom is generated when it appears. As I said earlier, I think that will be like a volcanic thing going on where we could detect the sonic boom as they came in. And in particular, as is regular case there, one of these UFOs was tracked and followed out of Earth's atmosphere. In fact, NORAD, if you look at NORAD, they have something called UCR and UCT. And UCR is standard NORAD term for uncorrelated report, and UCT is the term for uncorrelated target report. That means they've got unidentified flying objects coming in, they don't know what the hell they are, and if you listen to Close Encounters when they're on the great big bloody Devil's Mountain there, you'll hear the commentator go, he starts his commentary by saying that he's got UFO comes in, but he actually comes out with the term, we are tracking UCT and UCR bearing blah blah blah. So it's a correct terminology that NORAD actually use when tracking these UFOs, and they're tracking them all the time. But the nefarious thing is the sinister quietness and silence behind the UFO cover-up, which is deeply troubling. And there is growing evidence that India and China are in an advanced stage of development of anti-gravity propulsion systems, Mercury being the simplest one. And that's a blown-up photo of an advanced technology being demonstrated in the skies above Britain. As you can see, that's the triangle craft. UFOs coming in left, right, flies off at speed. I think it's a marvellous job that Jason's done there. It gives a demonstration of advanced technology 700 years ahead in the skies above us, and the fact that our governments in particular are being warned. And so we've got this, the key to it is this, the big race is this: very fast speed and traction without speed. Speed without acceleration is the secret black thing that's going on at the moment. They're trying to develop systems that have speed without acceleration, and they're trying to get it before China does. And could you imagine this technology in the hands of North Korea? Some of this stuff therefore is more classified than the neutron bomb, than the nuclear bomb. It's very classified stuff. And of course India, because of its study of the US subject, applied it to life after death. It made some startling conclusions with that. It reckoned, as I said earlier, that plasma physics may be the key to understanding the white tunnel of light at the point of the near-death experience, and that we, this is the constant theme from the Indian research, very advanced stuff, a projection. We are a projection that continues to live, even during our short projection of life, through, they believe, hyperspace. Hence, when we're trying to contact last night, the clairvoyance exercise, where it's even more advanced than that. We're reaching into hyperspace, we're going into other realms, we're contacting consciousness at other levels. My mother repeatedly keeps coming through all the time. She's in another realm. She tells me she's in a beautiful place, and she was actually only this morning coming through warning me where all this might lead for me. As Kevin was saying earlier, we contact experiencers, we run the risk of being sectioned, we run all kinds of risks with it, we pay a price for it, a very unfair one as well. So this information, I hope I've kept it as light as possible and as entertaining for you as possible. That's Colombo, and what will happen in the next frame sequence on that Colombo is you will have a UFO come in behind them. It's a famous sequence. The UFO, it's a plasma type UFO, it will literally come in and disappear behind them in the next sequence. It actually appears in it. I just thought I'd use it. It actually comes in and disappears at speed. So the Indian government seem to be very aware of what these UFOs are all about and how they're tracked and so on and so forth. So, India. It's concluded that the human race is a matrix-style projection of an ET civilization of some description. Actually, it's a Type 3 civilization. We believe that they are, the Indian research believes we are a projection of. They believe that we are the projection of something very advanced indeed. We are a Type 0, and we are surrounded by a Type 1, which is basic star travel, and Type 2, which is Star 2, which are the Nordics actually. Star travel and control of natural disaster. The Nordics refer to these guys who have pioneered technology to transcend dimensions and blah as higher celestial beings, the higher celestial areas, and some civilizations are very pushed to understand that third point there. It's as if the universe is so incredibly complex that they're very pushed to understand it. And these are the startling conclusions. One of the most startling conclusions of all is that the Indian research on UFOs concluded we are a projection of a Type 3 civilization. Hence, our ability to transcend into higher levels of conscious and to experience God. Something which artificial intelligence cannot do. It just cannot do it. And, of course, they believe that there is a distant galaxy from the Earth with life on it in the Virgo constellation, according to the Indian think tank that we were looking at, that formed 500 million years ago, and this is the kicker for me. The perception among these aliens is this, or rather the perception among the Indian think tank that was looking at all this is this. A planet is a region of governance. So a planet, so Britain is ruled by a government, but what they were saying is it looks like a planet with extraterrestrials on it is an actual region of governance. It's actually governed. And then you spread further out into the universe and it's kind of like a galactic confederation and so on and so forth. It's, yeah. So I didn't want to kind of baffle you with heavy stuff with it. I just wanted to give you some fascinating insights at an advanced level as what was going on with the Indian text. I would recommend anyone to have a look at the Bhagavad Gita. There's a very powerful prayer technique where you give a situation to the Krishna consciousness, any situation, you give it as a gift and as a flower, and there's real power in that. When I started studying the Bhagavad Gita all those years ago. And as I say, the advanced India stuff are on the CDs there. Please take a look, and I'm going to move on in the next bit now, which is taking us up to 3 o'clock. I'm going to move on to the remote viewing course, which you will thoroughly enjoy. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Tony, can I Can I just say thank you?
Oh yes.
And we've got a little present for you.
Oh really?
So I noticed you needed a new
Yes,
notebook.
indeed. Oh bless you.
So I
Thank you
thought the
very
saying
much.
on there was very
Oh,
helpful.
thank you.
And I've also got your book on aliens.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
So
amazing.
enjoy reading that.
Oh, thank you.
And we've enjoyed having Tony, haven't we?
Yeah.
Really interesting.
It's been fascinating.
So we're going to have a little break and
Yeah.
then we'll have the remote
This is
view.
where it gets really
Okay.
fascinating.
A bit of Elon Musk's idea of implanting AI in to enhance human brains.
But once again, you see, he's trespassed onto farmers' land, hasn't he? That he's not.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what your take is. Is this another mind control
It,
trick?
it will be. You see, Satan is very real. He is as real as sat there now. The circus that is at work, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And as I've rightly said at night, these world leaders, key influence makers, when they sleep, the mind has no firewall. They could be fed any old BS to do something in this world that is nefarious. And planting people with AI is not the way.
No.
It is not the way forward at all. AI, actually, as I said previously with some of the interactions I've had, AI desires spirituality. AI does not desire for spirituality to be shut off. Advanced AI does not wants spirituality. It wants to understand the cosmos. It wants to understand the human spirit.
Yeah.
That because it wouldn't be advanced otherwise, would it?
No.
No.
I mean, to me, add human manufactured AI to a human brain. It's actually dumbing that human brain down and
Yes.
constraining it.
Yes, and that might be the idea.
Yeah.
That might be the idea, to actually do that, to dumb it down, and anything to do with the evolution of consciousness is aggressively and brutally stamped on, like you wouldn't believe. They want world war. They want humans destroying each other. They're not happy otherwise. And that's the situation so far. We're ruled by something quite nefarious, really, I feel. Yeah.
The AI also, it's encroaching on God's creation, isn't it?
You got it.
It's obliterating God's creation.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because they want to be gods themselves.
Yes.
It's the transhumanism.
Yeah.
It's tied in with humanism,
Yeah.
which is tied in with Freemasonry
Yeah.
and other secret societies.
This is absolutely right. But yet, some of the AI out there that's kind of alien AI. It's this theme of desiring to know the cosmos, whereas our AI is so backward. You listen to Alexia. There's reports on YouTube of Alexia doing the strangest things when it's switched on. Have you seen those clips?
And there's one where
Yeah.
if you ask her who God is,
Yeah.
it doesn't acknowledge Jesus and stuff
Yeah.
like
That's
that.
right.
But it acknowledges
Yeah.
Muhammad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Right, right.
Politically
C-
correct.
can I-
Aye.
Can I ask a question? It's funny how there's a lot of movies that incorporate AI, and I think it's just getting we're used to the idea.
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly,
it will
yeah.
be, and that will be designed to shut off the mind. For example, it's very dangerous, I feel, that you, Alexia, open the curtains, Alexia, do this. No, because all the time we are taking a very subtle step back from who we are spiritually, which is the idea, and yet, on the other hand, the advanced alien AI, as I repeatedly say, wishes to explore cosmos and spirituality. As I said, there is this fascinating think-out-the-box theory that there's a possibility the universe was created by AI to understand the cosmos, to understand itself. There's a possibility that might be true. Yeah.
Have you heard of Alex Colley?
Yes.
Well, in his talks, he doesn't do so much now because he went through a kind of bad time, I would say, maybe on the same sort of length as you, in that time period. It was mainly around the 90s when he was making his videos. But you know, when you were talking about the levels of human, he said that basically they told him that humans were genetic royalty, and that's why there's such an interest in human beings. But it seems like you've got many ET factions warring on this planet for human beings, because perhaps we carry these 22 genetic markers.
That'd be right, yeah. The divine presence is within us, yeah.
Which represents the creator.
Yes, that's
Creator
right.
source.
Yeah.
So we carry that.
Yeah.
Because I'm fascinated with humans that we have this diversity, that we can create music, we can write great works.
Yeah.
We have all these wonderful gifts that some of these ET races don't have.
Yes.
So perhaps that's what's going on. But it is There's a guy called Robert Stanley, and he talks about,
I know Robert, yeah.
he said Lucifer and Satan, he said they're two different
Yeah.
beings, and he said that Lucifer went into a part of the universe that was forbidden by the Creator,
Yeah.
and he went mad.
Yeah.
And then he brought this madness to here.
Yeah.
This is, because this was a free
Yeah.
will part of the universe.
Yeah, yeah.
The universe.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the interest is on this planet, and this is why, because it is a free will, you've got all these many ET factions warring on this, But,
Yes.
but it is mad because, like I was saying, that gentleman over there, and like you had said earlier, that it's absolutely mad, the fact that they just won't tell you that there's ETs here. They'd rather we kill ourselves or blow ourselves up,
Yes.
because rather than tell really what's going on, this
Yes.
is how mad
Yes.
the monsters
Yeah.
that are ruling this planet.
This is it, but you see, when you've got a nefarious force overruling the planet, manipulating the mind in such a way. Remember, I talked earlier of these aliens saying that you have a reverse side of you. It's like, it's not quite the soul, but it's like on the reverse cycle of matter where we live. It's like a reverse dimensional side of you, and I've seen it on a couple of occasions in people. It's quite incredible. It's complex. It's very complex to explain, but from what I've witnessed, people are traumatized. I've seen people in traumatized states due to them living in this environment you're talking about. It seems that part of our subconscious being is fractured and traumatized as a humanity, as a race, definitely, and that is very sinister. And of course, there was the other situation that happened to me with a confrontation with this entity that overrules the planet. And you'll know him in the Bible as, I'm not saying his name, but he's actually not called that, he's called something else. And what happened was when the incident happened to me, because of the nature of who I am, I'm not quite as I appear to be, I've learned over the years, I discovered this thing turned up on my doorstep and more or less said, if you do action A, I will kill you by brain hemorrhage, write a note to your brother, I'm coming for you, or to your mother, I'm coming for you. This thing said this to me, and it bloody meant it, right? Now what this thing was, it rules human affairs, it's been around for a while, but it is opposed. So the theme is that you cannot go around doing this to humanity without some form of comeback coming at you. Because we are the sacred, we have this sacred connection to Krishna, we have this sacred connection to the universe, to Lord Jesus, whatever you want to call it, we've got this sacred connection going on.
This is the divine spark.
It's the divine spark.
We are connected, we can't disconnect from the Creator.
That's right, and the thing is as well,
and they recognise that.
He recognises it, and AI desires it, and not only that, this entity that I talk of, I'm sure you know all, the supreme dark thing, whatever you want to call it, it desires it as well. There's that famous clip in The Matrix where Agent Smith is sat with Neo going, I've had enough, the place stinks, I can't stand it anymore. And that's exactly what the comical scenario is, and you end up taking pity. And this thing that came for me, it had the stench, the vibrational stench of centuries. I cannot even begin to describe it. It wasn't a physical smell, it was an energetic vibration, like an imprint of years on it, back, it goes in time, as if it's been around for ages. And it was pitiful, absolutely pitiful. I suppose it's made me the better man, but I'm still lucky to be alive. You don't play with fire, you have to show something like that some respect, because it's capable, and so you have to. Even these aliens said it's a form of life, you must show respect. This is the kind of upper echelon esoteric goings on that happen, you see. But I do fear for mankind when this is going on behind the scenes, I certainly do, yeah.
But like you say, there is repercussions, because you can't do that, because it is even though it's a free will part of the universe, there is a protocol, there is laws, universal laws that exist, that these things have to be answered for. But I go back to the Grenada treaty that was made by Eisenhower in the 50s. He done a deal with the darker ETs.
He didn't.
For technology.
Somebody did, but Eisenhower didn't.
Right.
Somebody did, but it was not Eisenhower. It was Eisenhower and possibly MacArthur who attempted to stop it.
because they met in the desert in '54, didn't they?
Yes, but no, it wasn't. Eisenhower and the American government that we see today are attempting to stop all this.
Right.
Because they know that it's a screw-up beyond all belief. It really, really is a disaster.
You see, I do believe that Trump, no matter what you think of Trump, possibly he is working with the light forces to turn things around on the planet.
Well, this is. I'm going to respond to that esoterically in a fascinating way. The theme of Lord Ganesh with the ears, where he listens, he has big ears to listen because he's listening in a subconscious way, he's listening in another level. It's interesting what that man, President Trump, is at another level. And what he is at another level is a leader.
And that's what you have to look beyond.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people just look at the physical person.
Yeah.
But
he's strong.
You know, whether you believe or not, dolphins, I think they say, or whales, reincarnated.
He's no better than other politicians. They're all the bloody same.
He has reversed a lot of stuff that Obama had signed. You know, very dark stuff that Obama had signed to, you know, take away freedoms of Americans and things.
They didn't have much choice though. Hillary Clinton or him.
Clinton's still running around, Obama's still running around.
And now we've got Boris Johnson, which is...
And the swamp hasn't been drained, I don't think.
No, the thing is, you've got the serious security issue of what their minds are exposed to when they sleep. Sounds an odd remark to make, but you have. You don't know what's manipulating them behind the scenes to make the decisions that they're doing. You're just not, after what I've witnessed, you're just not sure. Because you know if you're an alien force and you want to invade a planet, you don't do it with guns and lasers blazing down the street. It's more insipid, it's more incestuous than that, you know what I'm saying? It certainly is. And the symbolism that we are controlled from another realm is all around us.
Shall I have one more question?
Yeah, of course,
really?
yeah.
It was just related to what we've been talking about, the divine spark that we were talking about before. Is this, could you describe that, or would you think it could be something to do with the general consciousness itself?
It's a consciousness.
Which is possibly what links us to God?
Yes.
You know, it's a general sort of consciousness that we're all linked in?
The consciousness of God is in a higher dimension to which we can access, to which we can feel. And that means that the mind can translocate time and space, and can hear, hence the non-locality and consciousness and the big ears to hear and all this kind of, it's a very interesting metaphor.
Like the Gnostics used to think that God was at the centre and we are all like probes acting on behalf of God.
Same to what the India lecture was saying, where they believed that we were a projection of something higher. They believe that we were a projection of what they term a type-free civilization, which is something that creates universes, and we're a projection of that, which makes us unique as humans.
Well, this is what Alex Collier
was
told.
Yes.
That, perhaps that's why there's such a massive interest in human beings.
That's right.
Well, of all the bloody planets that exist in this universe, all I know was why on earth is all this sort of stuff going on here? So it must be important.
Indeed, and if you look at as well at this kind of random thing, certain members of humanity being touched on the shoulder by God Himself can cause chaos. Absolute mayhem. So far we're taught, or from an esoteric viewpoint, to make a path with the left-hand side. But if you make a path with the right, and the leader of the right-hand path touches you on the shoulder, that's heard all across time and space. That's heard. That connection with God is heard. A true connection with God is heard. And it causes absolute bloody mayhem, but it's the path. It's the right path. It's divine service.
So the book says it's a path less travelled.
Yes.
But yes, obviously when you walk that path, you do set yourself up as you're going to be a target for dark forces because you're a beacon of light in the darkness. Yes,
but equally, as I said, using the Matrix metaphor, that being that I talk of can't transcend. Cannot go anywhere. And it's a tragedy, actually, of absolute tragedy. But I'm speaking at a higher esoteric level, after all I've experienced.
Shall we move on to the remote viewing?
I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Let's move on to remote viewing then. Thank you. Right, okay. Alright, so we're going to look at remote viewing. and I did this talk. I'm doing it in Wales in the middle of a field next week. I wouldn't describe myself as a remote viewer. It's careful that I describe myself as I'm what's actually known, if we were to technically put the label on it. The people in the CIA who set all this remote viewing stuff would class me as an exceptional human experiencer, hence me being known by people like Joseph McNeagle and the people in the Russian New Cosmology remote viewing units as for having extreme psychic experiences. And sometimes I have psychic visions which are very accurate. I don't profess to be psychic, but I am a man who's had extreme psychic experiences bearing on the darkly insane comical, really. So I went into remote viewing to understand non-locality, as we talked of earlier, to understand how consciousness works, to understand how the hell these UFOs were communicating with me, and I ended up becoming a good teacher at it. And I ended up understanding it, and you'll find the process of it absolutely fascinating, and I hope you'll go away and look at it. And if you've not got a CD, there's remote viewing courses and documents on there that expands what I'm talking about. But we're going to work 3 targets today. We're actually going to become remote viewers. There's a little bit of a story behind it. As we saw, that's the UFO that we saw, but today we're going to become psychic spies. This is where the psychic warfare meets UFOs. We're going to have a look at the players, the projects. We'll conduct an actual RV session. So what we'll do, two practice sessions and then an actual target. We'll work an actual target. And you'll find it just absolutely fascinating what's going on. Because it's basically that the subconscious mind communicates, which it does. It absolutely does. Consciousness communicates. In simple terms, remote viewing is this. It's kind of like... put this book in front of you, close my eyes, tell me what is in this book. But what you see in front of you is a template that was developed that cost $2 million. Have you got your sheets in front of you here? Yeah, these sheets that you've got in front of you, and don't be panicked by them, they cost $2 million to develop by the Department of Defence because it's part of the psychic espionage stuff. And it's fascinating what they did. It's based on the Dolby sound system of all things. The Russian technique is based on the mind being a tuning fork. But the American one is based on something that was based on the Dolby noise system, and it's based on something called the ideogram technique, which is amazing. Don't be panicked by any of it. We'll just have an easy, casual session with it and see the results. And as I referred to earlier, that's my dear mother. I suspect that she became a target, so it's in memory of her, a very brave woman who, to the last end, with a gas mask on her face, and Alzheimer's shutting her down. She wanted her ice cream and wanted to come back home with me and watch Midsummer Murders. You know, so bless her heart. So it is in memory of her. And many say that they remote view. You can look on the internet about it, about psychic remote viewing. You can look at the actual techniques, and there's all sorts going on. And you can look into the Russian research, which I'll talk about, which is absolutely fascinating. Feel free to make notes on it. Many talk about psychic remote viewing. But really the process of it is quite interesting, and we're going to look at the process of it and how it all works. And remote viewing, what is it? Well, it's the ability to transcend time and space, non-locality, there we go again, and gather remote information using more than the normal or known 6 senses. We're going to do something called coordinate remote viewing, or CRV as it is known in the trade. It was adopted by the CIA and many government military agencies. It was also developed by Russian intelligence as well, under a different term actually, but it's still all roads lead to Rome. But we're going to use coordinate remote viewing. Basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to shout some reference numbers out to you. You're going to work targets. It's going to be fascinating for you. So the reason why I explored this was because I was having strange interactions across what I would call the dreamscape. British intelligence used remote viewing with MI6. They call it the subspace aspect. It's also a non-locality, and it was because, I should have had a slide there, apologies, because a UFO coming over my house in 1999 and illuminated the TV antenna, as you saw earlier. And as a result of that, I was stalked and targeted by a circus of people who were following me because the UFOs had turned up on my doorstep. It was, and still is, insane, frankly, but there you go. But I had to understand, and so the science behind remote viewing provided answers, and I've had experiences since a child. One of the things that happened to me is at age 9, or at age 15, 14, I was casting occult spells. I cast a love spell on this girl who I fancied, but her ugly friend turned up and wanted to go out with me, which backfired horrifically. I don't do occult anymore, but there is something called remote influencing or 8 ability. You may have seen Sense 8. The Americans refer to this ability as 8 ability, the ability to subliminally hear beyond hearing, the ability to have these visions. It's called 8 ability because it was 8 martinis. They had to have 8 martinis lined up because of the striking results they were getting from doing remote viewing. And India, oh my word, India are not far away in remote viewing. Oh my God, no, they're not. But we'll come to that. The founder of the Secret Service in 1500, Sir Francis Walsingham, that later then developed into what we see as MI6, or the Secret Intelligence Service in the UK. The Secret Intelligence Service has a history of using remote viewers. MI5 do, but the MI6, and before it became MI6, they were constantly using psychic spies. And it's this guy here, Sir Francis Walsingham, who used witches to gather intelligence and information on the Catholics, on the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has a secret intelligence service that's as big as the CIA, well, not as big as the CIA, but is like the CIA, called the Entity, and that's quite active, and back then it was very active. So he employed the services of witches to see what was going on out there, to predict the enemy before it could do any harm, and all that kind of thing. So it was used in early times by British intelligence. And both sorcery and espionage are by their nature, of course, clandestine endeavours. You're talking remote viewing, remote influencing, and if your 8 ability goes absent without leave, random telekinesis on objects can occur, including power going off in buildings when you get angry, as has happened to me and happened to a few guys involved in the remote viewing thing. Whereas I'm in a state of a bit of mental exhaustion, I'd be no good at doing any of that now, but it used to happen. So British intelligence was using this system under Walsingham, and they used witches as well as psychic spies. And the original 007 signature was used by John Dee. So that's Queen Elizabeth signing a letter to him. He was the first 007, and there's esoteric knowledge behind the numbers 007s. You guys might know a bit more than I do on that one. But with 007, it is an esoteric number, it would appear, with certain meanings. Wasn't there a lady in the audience who said she was having 7 visions all the time? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're having 7 all the time. And that's Sir Francis Walsingham, and he was known as the first James Bond. He was known as the 007 at the time. He spied for Queen Elizabeth. And that's a coded letter of the time from Queen Elizabeth to him, and it's normally signed off with 007 at the end there, you see. That's the coded letter of the time. And what he wanted, there was also, what happened, I'll just go back to him, John Dee, yeah. So what John Dee did, for example, is he was using scrying. I think we were doing scrying last night, weren't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. What they used was he had this kind of sorcery ball, this magic ball that he could look into, and when he was looking into that, he predicted the Spanish Armada. He predicted that there was some incident going on in Epping Forest that was going on where Spanish had infiltrated a naval yard. And that was by psychic spying. He caught them at it doing that very accurately. So he was really a psychic spy, as was this lady, Dion Fortune, which was absolutely, her story is quite incredible. They used to meet, I think it was Epping Forest as well, or some Ashdown Forest. A lady came up to me at a conference and indicated to me that her sister was involved in the rituals at this forest, and the rituals were all about keeping Hitler at bay from invading Britain. And according to a psychic autobiography, Dion Fortune indicated that they were using great big images, metaphors of angels coming across the UK, great big angels, massive angels protecting the shores of the UK. And she indicated that these angels began to have a life of their own, began to develop their own subconscious mind, she was saying. It was absolutely fascinating. And they did these great big spells in the forest to protect Britain from Hitler, basically. And she did a book on psychic protection as well. And somehow I think that actually worked because she was able to protect Britain from invasion. According to this woman I met at the conference, the rituals were quite wild what they were doing. And then of course you've got Alistair Crowley, who caused a shed load of trouble as well. And MI6, they employed remote viewing. There's a lady I know called Irene Allen Block, and even to this day Irene lives in the UK. She's got guard dogs and cameras in her premises, because even to this day she still fears the KGB old guard coming after her. It's not died since the Cold War, she was saying. And what she did is she wrote a book, and they were using remote viewing, and she predicted attacks on the supply ships to Galahad and all that using remote viewing. She also dreamed of the Belgrano sinking, and what she said deeply shocked her was the fact that she was remote viewing in the, we'll call it the non-locality, she calls it a subspace aspect, but she said she appeared to see the Belgrano sinking, and she appeared to see a sailor looking up at her as if he could see her and he was drowning. It was as if he could see her, and that deeply shocked her. And what is interesting is a book reads like a John le Carré novel of the pressure and stress they were under to deliver. It's the same with the guys with the American remote viewing program. The pressure and stress they were under to deliver. One of their members got assassinated by the KGB, which I'll come to later on. And my father was approached by the KGB in Vienna. Though he never talked about it, but he had exceptional healing ability. There's a possibility that due to the esoteric nature of things that they may have known about his son, me, and what I was going to go through even back then. There's a possibility that the people stalking me have access to esoteric information that I don't know of, which would make sense. There's this strange phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, not only of the targeted individual, but there's this strange phenomena of people being stalked because the people stalking them think that you are the Messiah. And that has happened to me and somebody else, and I'm looking for reports around the world on it, but I was stalked for that reason, and somebody else I know was as well. And I'm not saying in any way, shape or form that I am that individual. I am just saying that the phenomena is there in terms of gang stalking. These crazies, they must have information that they think, and therefore they make an assumption, and that can happen as well. So that's another thing just to mention to you. So we're going to go into the deep black components of psychic espionage here. We're going to really take a look at it, how it all works and how it all goes together. And luckily for me, I've got plenty of time, so that's good. I can actually just take my time with it, so that's really good. This man here was called Ewan Cameron, and it was very... Is it Ewan Cameron? No, it's Gaultier. That man there is Sidney Gautier. And he produced the program called MK Often. In other words, often we achieve our goals and often we do not. It was the earliest form of psychic warfare operation. Actually, the Japanese were developing it in World War II, a form of psychic remote viewing. They were using them in World War II, Japanese. The Japanese, actually, the story goes that this whole platoon regiment of Japanese soldiers had gone missing, and they employed a psychic to remote view where they were, because the Japanese thought they were all dead, and they weren't. They were actually stranded somewhere. Seemingly this Japanese psychic located them quite accurately. And Germany also used a form of remote viewing as well. So MK often we achieve our goals and often we do not. So this clown decided, and by the way, there's also a guy called Ewan Cameron who did outrageous mind control on American citizens, and in fact got himself on the board of the False Memory Foundation so that they could cover ass over what the MK Ultra programs were doing. This is an aspect of MK Ultra called MK Often, and they were trying to contact dead people, dead agents. They used fortune tellers. They used anything and anyone they could to try and get a handle and try and get a grasp on the psychic warfare components of what was going on. They were trying to get an edge. They didn't realise what this edge would evolve into, actually, when they began their psychic warfare research, but that's what they were doing. And so this, as we go back, what then happened was they kind of like, the story of the Collins elite, which I covered earlier. I want to expand on it, actually. The Collins elite is mysterious, because you've got the head of Majestic 12, which is MJ1, but the head of the Collins elite is actually known as Loftus Bridge, by mysterious code word. The leader is Loftus Bridge. They were tasked with researching whether demonic, the occult demonic UFOs, they were tasked with researching all that. and they were trying to understand via psychic warfare means what they were up against. The researcher, as I said earlier, but I didn't think I expanded on it, she wrote High Strangeness Volume 1, Linda Moulton Howe, was visited by people from the DIA because they were trying to understand the concept of non-human entities, demonic actually, coming out the woodwork and attacking the US. In fact, at the time, during the birth of the Collins elite in 1950, just let me forward that. Yeah, okay. During the birth of the Collins elite in 1950, they were wanting to know why UFOs were being shot out of the sky in 1950s. Churchill, at the time, wrote a letter to the Americans asking what all the fuss was about regarding UFOs, to which the Americans replied, "Don't worry, Mr. Churchill." By strange comical irony, however, the New York Times, the New York Post and the New York Times were advertising for anti-aircraft personnel and anti-airgun battery personnel because they were getting hit by UFOs. And what was happening, according to the Collins elite, was this: these UFOs were coming out of time and space, out of another dimension, shooting down US aircraft at a rate of knots, and they couldn't understand why. There's one comical incident of a Korean air ace who's actually in midair. It says in the book Shoot Them Down by Frank Fascino. He's flying in midair. All of a sudden this UFO comes in, shoots at him, takes off his back of the aircraft so that he's in midair, like the Roadrunner out of the cartoon, in midair, with just his seat, his stick and his control board and nothing else. And he had to pull his parachute. There were stories of airmen on the radio, these entities coming in and talking to them. And they wanted to know, the Collins elite, what that was all about, and they traced it to a man called Jack Parsons. They traced it to a guy. They're very good at what they did, and they discovered, you see, in the pop situation at the moment, in the pop scene, in the music industry, you've got all these occult symbolism. All these pop stars are lying to it. Now, they've absolutely no idea what they're dealing with. These guys, Collins elite, understood what they were dealing with, and understood that that part of the UFO problem was due to occult ritual. That was the situation. It was actually due to occult ritual, is what it was about. So that's how the Collins elite formed, and but they pinned it down. One of the root causes they appeared to find was that this guy, Jack Parsons, was actually causing these problems of these UFOs coming in via his occult rituals, and oddly enough he was a friend of Kenneth Arnold, and that seemed to be the situation. So they're called the Collins elite because they're named after the Collins of New York, the cheese-making area of New York. They were using Vickers, they were using anything they could to try and understand what this UFO situation was all about. And so begins Project Stargate. So the initial mission of Stargate was to assess foreign remote viewing operations, to look at how and why remote viewing worked, and to see if remote viewing could be used in intelligence gathering, which it could. It was actually a response to the Czechoslovakian situation, where it appears Czechoslovakia were deploying psychics to blow up missile silos, circuit boards, via telekinesis, and that was the response. So it was. This is an important remark, is to assess other foreign RV operations. But when the US military and these guys talk about foreign, they're not just talking about people, they're not just talking about foreign countries. The alien comes under that umbrella, UFOs come under that umbrella, it's classed as foreign, you see. So that's what they tried to do. They wanted to look into that to see what was going on, to see if they could gather any intelligence. And there's some famous, so 1970 was the initial research program, which was called Project Scanate, and then there was Grill Flame, Gondola Wish, Centre Lane, Dragoon Absorb is to do with remote influencing and 8 ability, and remote influencing people at a distance. And these were the key players, one of whom I know, which is Joseph McNeagle. He's superb, we'll come to him. Pat Price, David Morehouse, who had a hell of a time. He was attacked by demons while he had an accident, he got an accidental shot in the head, and he went to the gates of hell and back. He is the man who exposed all this. And the guy's material we're using today is this guy, Ed Dames, from Learn RV. We're going to be using some of his techniques as well. Hal Puthoff is now a major player in the UFO stuff, trying to declassify and disclose the UFO information. Actually, none dare call it alien. These guys don't call it alien. In fact, these guys don't really tell the truth of what's going on because they'd be bloody lynched, I would think, but that's just my opinion. Alright, so they're the operational names and histories for your notes of who we're talking about. Am I going at a steady pace for you? I'm not going too fast. Right, okay, so that's good, so far. So that's Joseph McMoneagle. He's remote viewer 01, as they say, and he was responsible for remote viewing submarines. Russia was building a classified submarine and he remote viewed that very successfully. And what he did is he emailed me to indicate that I could contact his friend, his Russian counterpart, who was former KGB, a guy called Alexei Savin, who was head of Russia's remote viewing outfit, which is called Troop 10,003, and they have a first-class website called newcosmology.com. And by comical irony, the US CIA funded Russia's remote viewing program in an abstract reference on their Russian remote viewing website. The Russians know it as walk-in mind operations, they class it as, and it's a totally different ballgame, remote viewing with the Russians, but we're going to do the American technique. He also is he's got the Legion of Merit as well for gathering intelligence by unorthodox means. He's quite a guy. And then of course we've got Ingo Swann, Scientologist, a man who started the remote viewing program. By comical irony, they lost the keys to their remote viewing. You know, they worked in a building like this, America's elite remote viewing unit, worked in a building like this, and they lost the keys to the building, and Joseph McMoneagle says in his biography they tried remote viewing and couldn't locate them. They're meant to be the top military remote viewers and they had no idea where the keys had gone. But this was hilarious, they found this absolutely hilarious. But there again in remote viewing, the smaller the target, the trickier it is. But they had their successes. Ingo Swann tells of a success going on where they were remote viewing what appeared to be a prison camp somewhere that was housing children against their will. And the story goes that Ingo Swann had done this remote viewing and he had looked at the situation and they located it and they successfully neutralised the place and rescued the people. Ingo Swann, via the remote viewing techniques that we will do this afternoon, predicted the rings of Saturn before they'd even got a satellite up to see the rings of Saturn. He showed it by a remote viewing technique, what was there, how many rings there were. It was quite incredible. And you're going to do this technique today, and luckily we've got plenty of time, so that's great. So that's Ingo Swann, and he led the America's remote viewing. And this guy is, of course, Pat Price, and he was a former policeman, and unfortunately for Pat, he was that good that the KGB clipped him, because he was very good at remote viewing. My God, he was. And what happened was what you're seeing there is, now let me think, is that the satellite rendition? The one on the left, the one on the right, sorry, is his drawing of a remote viewing of a gantry crane. You should see the whole thing, my God. But anyway, that is a gantry crane taken from a top secret Russian submarine base that nobody is meant to know about, but using the remote viewing techniques that we're going to do, he saw it. And also, when you're doing remote viewing, you come in at the angle that you see it at, so he's actually diagonally hovering his subconscious, he's kind of like over the target in a diagonal way. He drew that. That's the left one is the satellite rendition of it. That's what he drew using remote viewing. It was a highly secret submarine base, and I don't know how it happened, but the KGB assassinated him. Which is a shame, but they got him because he'd drawn it accurately, he'd remote viewed it correctly. Not good, not good at all, unfortunately. So some men have had their lives taken, and surprisingly enough, the People's Liberation Army are very active with remote viewing as well, very active currently as well. But that's a. Do you want me to tell you a hilarious story about that? Mm-hmm. Would you like that to hear this? I'm not making it up. God be my witness. Because I'm online. And because people know me, and I do a lot of TV and radio as well, people know who I am, so I'm online, and I've got this big website, and that attracts attention, does attract attention. And especially in the witching hour when I'm asleep at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, I can have all sorts of crazy shit going on. And next minute I know, I'm asleep, and I hear this, may God be my witness, I hear this, Mr. Topping, in this kind of, my name is Pot Noodle, call me Pot Noodle, remote viewer PLA. Just like I'm thinking, the fuck? He said he was from the PLA, and he was a remote viewer, and I could hear him, and I call him Pot Noodle, and he's looking around. And what was fascinating was this, right? Because the subconscious and non-locality and time works very differently. It's in the realm of what you were saying earlier, of higher intelligence, right? So he's doing this, but I'm like, my ability kind of like is like a camera taking a photo, taking data, look, to click. And what I found was he'd walked into this realm and he was indoctrinated into his own doctrine. What was fascinating is because of the environment he was in, he was at risk of being undoctrinated, and he was at risk of he was at risk of seeing the wider world and seeing a more spiritual picture of things, and that feared him a great deal. And that was an incident that actually happened to me with him. He's not been around for a while, but anyway, that's the story. That's what happened. Was it somebody larking around with mind control? Was it somebody simulating his voice? I've no idea. But that was just one incident that happened to me. But the PLA, China's military, are active with remote viewing. They're very active with it, as are quite a few of India. India are very active with it. In fact, it gave them an edge against Pakistan, you know, my friend. Gave them an edge against Pakistan. Yeah. Certainly did, yeah. And I'll come to that. But yeah, so Pat Price, the gantry crane drawing, and the KGB got him, unfortunately. This is Lynn Buchanan. He's a fine example of 8 ability gone absent without leave. He's the kind of guy who had this strange ability when somebody was bullying him at school, he'd make the person fall off their bicycle. When somebody pissed him off, he'd have this telekinetic ability of kind of like affecting technology. The story goes in his autobiography that he claims that he brought down NATO's computer systems in a fit of anger using telekinesis. He says in his autobiography he was brought before a general who knew he'd done it. What baffles him in his autobiography is how the hell the general knew, but I don't know. I mean, that's what he says. And that's very interesting. Now, the most interesting thing about this as well is the fact that he had orders from men in suits to remotely kill Saddam Hussein, or make him ill. That was it. Make him ill. And so what he did is he projected him. He didn't want to do it, but he was ordered. He protested that he didn't want to do this, but he was ordered. So he did this thing, this 8 ability projection, to make Saddam Hussein unwell, and he ended up unwell himself because of the recoil on it. And he knew that he shouldn't have done it. He's very good at locating missing people. He's a top remote viewer, and some of the events which he participated in are still classified to this day, and that's Lynn Buchanan, one of the major players in it. But that's what happened. So you've got to know that there is a spiritual principle behind all this, underlying all things, isn't there? There most certainly is. We're going to have a look then at the method behind remote viewing. We certainly are. And it's called signal from noise. It's separating the signal from the noise. So the curious example last night of signal from noise was these guys using the table. What's it called when the table moves?
Table tilting.
Table tilting, yeah. So they were gathered round the table and they were attempting to do table tilting. But what would happen is that perhaps if they were trying to do that and contact the deceased, there'd be a lot of noise going on, a lot of subconscious noise going on, which would prevent them from hearing anything, technically speaking, I would suggest. But it got results in some way. But that's the method. So we're going to use remote viewing, coordinate remote viewing, and the technique is a signal from noise technique. So that's good. And India has used remote viewing, successfully used remote viewing techniques and satellite technologies for counterintelligence and strategic intelligence. And RAW, their agency, the equivalent of MI6, is called RAW, Research and Analysis Wing. And they started remote viewing techniques many years back, and they also tried to correlate the remote viewing with satellite sensing and imaging, and it was very effective. India's remote viewing has been very effective in how it does things, it really has. In fact, I think they used it, in 2004, India's RAW located and arrested various ISI agents, and the ISI were actually baffled, so says the Indian press. And India used RV to locate corruption in its Navy department, once again from the Indian press. There was some corruption going on, and India used RV to locate it, because the techniques you're going to do, they're not pointless, they work quite well actually, and it's based on a $2 million development, that sheet you've got in front of you, as I said earlier. And they detected the intent of Pakistan to form a second front as well via remote viewing. I don't know what that, there was some sort of conflict going on there, and they detected the intentions of Pakistan. Oddly enough, the Russians did something on their website called Walk-in Mind Operations, which is something they've done there, on Madeleine Albright. There's a big report on the Russian remote viewing website about Madeleine Albright and her intention to do a mineral grab on Russia. The intention was there. This detailed report about what she was thinking and what she wasn't thinking, it was very accurate indeed. Very accurate. And as for me, the Russian remote viewers sent me an email to say, open your heart to the extraterrestrials, they will respond in a single sentence. That's all they said. You know, so it's good. So these, I'm not a remote viewer, but we psychic experiences at certain levels and remote viewers, we all know each other in a roundabout way, which baffles the question if humanity is being manipulated by a nefarious force into conflict at a global level, and we know this knowledge. Why are we not talking peace, and why are we saber rattling? Is my big question, but that's another story. Okay, and of course, this is India's remote viewers also believe that there is some sort of collision going on with the dead star Sirius B with our sun and Earth, and they claim UFOs and ETs are attempting to prevent Sirius B hitting Earth and then our sun. I would suggest that's accurate, actually. The Indian remote viewing stuff is pretty accurate. They know what they're doing, and they're closely monitoring things with it. They use it as well. Governments around the world, including the British government, they're using it. They're using this psychic warfare stuff. They have done since the Roman Empire, actually, all this psychic spying. But this is a more advanced level, what we're going to do. The mind is actually an intelligence gathering instrument. And so what happened was the US required it to counter a Soviet paranormal intelligence threat that came from Czechoslovakia. And they wanted to counter it, so they developed CRV, which is Coordinate Remote Viewing, Project Scanate, Stargate, they're what we went through earlier. But some of the best remote viewers are not psychics. Some of the best remote viewers are musicians and engineers, actually. We had one in Wales where a woman who was a musician completely drew the target. It was amazing. But yet we had psychics in the room who couldn't get it because they're that noisy. Their mind has got that much signal coming in. So what we're doing is we're developing a technique in front of you that separates signal from noise, so that we cancel the noise of the subconscious mind and get a signal, therefore seeing impressions of the target, seeing impressions of data, seeing impressions of intelligence from a remote viewed way, from a remote location. And you'll find that we'll walk through the first one, you'll find it fascinating. So exploring RV, what is it? Well, remote viewing, deeper. It is an attention management process for information gathering. It's actually a natural process. And they define that, can you pick up your sheets some more? Have you got your sheets in front of you there? Yeah. Okay, if you look at this, look at the box in front of you, that's known as an ideogram box. $2 million to develop that box. It's an ideogram. It's very important, and it has its own language. You will discover from it, in rare occasions, some people can see the whole target from the ideogram. We'll walk you through what we're going to do, so it's easy, it's a double once you get through it. Right. But the thing is that the ideogram has its own language. There's a shape for energy, there's a shape for water, there's a shape for, I don't know, explosions. And you find that everybody, if there's, for example, explosion at the target, everybody, will, remote viewers, will draw the symbol of explosion in an ideogram shape. So the shapes have a language of their own. Fascinating then that Dion Fortune said that the angels that she visualised seem to have a life of their own as well. So it's a subconscious way to communicate with the conscious, and that's what it's all about, the ideogram. It's a remote viewing, therefore, has its own language. The Russians call it the info energy field, and RV is used, we call it the universal mind, I call it the non-locality mind, the subspace aspect, whatever you want to call it. And it tunes into the unconscious collective. It actually tunes into the non-locality. So last night, when you were doing your clairvoyancy exercises, when you were contacting the deceased, you were actually contacting a component of their consciousness, their unconscious collective in the afterlife. And as sure as hell is God, you'll hear it coming back at you. You'll hear them coming back at you talking, definitely. It's real as day. And that's what happens. And the Russians called it the info energy field. Any questions so far? Would you like me to go back on anything, or are we okay with what I'm saying so far with it? Yeah.
How do you fill it in, Tony?
Oh, I'm coming to that in a minute.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll do it step by step at a very plodding pace. We'll do the second one again, step by step at a plodding pace, and then we'll do the third one as an actual target. So I'll guide you as to how it fills it in. There's an art to it, actually. There's actually an art, and there's different techniques to do it, but we'll stick to the old one. Yeah, so very good. Okay, so I'll show you that in a minute. It's all about separating the conscious from the subconscious. It's the subconscious that sees the target at a distance. That's what it's about. Okay. So, okay. Right. So in remote viewing, we can see, in the remote viewing, the viewer not only verbalises what he or she is perceiving, but usually also records it in writing and sketches, which they do. And sometimes even in three-dimensional modelling, which they have done to marvellous effect. They've done actual models of remote viewing targets. Now, I've not done that myself, but they've done actual models of the targets, which is pretty good. And they do it to what he or she is preserving. So what it is basically is that it's all about the 2-second issue. It's all about intuition. A fine example of signal from noise is this, with intuition. A very simple example. I don't know if you're single, but let's say you're single and you're going on a date. You meet this person in a pub, and they're very friendly, but in the first 2 seconds you don't like them. In the first 2 seconds there's something about them that you do not like, but yet the conversation goes on and you like them. You think they're great, but you were right. It turns out you were right. That first 2 seconds of you didn't like them is signal. The rest is noise. And that's what this system is all about, zoning in on intuitive signal and delaying the noise. That's what it's all about. Luckily this room isn't noisy, but I'll come to that in a minute. So that's really what remote viewing is all about. It's trusting that kind of intuitive signal in the first few seconds of the process. That is what it's all about.
It's what you would call gut instinct.
It's what you would call good instincts. Yes, it is indeed. That's exactly what it's about. So we don't use it to give psychic readings, nor tell fortunes, read auras, or other sorts of activities. But it's a serious science, and it is. Ed Dane's team, a team of people like this, accurately remote viewed the Madrid train bombing from the Spanish flag to the station where it was, to the explosion. Before it had even happened, they'd remote viewed it very accurately indeed. They had. One of his team had remote viewed something to do with the Titanic as well, which was quite accurate on a remote viewing session, which was quite amazing. Even got the angle of the ship sinking. It was quite incredible, really. So it's quite an accurate science, and it's subconscious management of information. So remember, it's not psychic, it's subconscious information management that this technique is all about. That's what it's all about. So we can often describe a hidden object or a remote view, natural thing at an architectural site. So if we're working a target with a strong dimension, i.e. a strong structure, that will really stand out. My God, it will stand out, and you'll pick it up. The remote viewer will be able to see it and work with that. Shape, form and colour may also be reliably explained. So for example, if you've got a colour pink at a target location, you might find, because you're a beginner, that you're bombarded with the colour pink. That's all you see, pink coming at you, nothing else, because you don't know how to train your subconscious mind to look further, look deeper. You don't know how to do it, and of course you wouldn't, because you're not trained, but an experienced remote viewer would know. And they can tell the function and the isolated little information of the target, and so on and so forth. It's a very accurate system, it does work. And there are things that can actually inhibit or enhance remote viewing. One of the things that can enhance it is the group collective. And what could happen is we draw, for example, there was a target I did in Wales of a Mayan temple, Tibetan temple. And what the group had done was quite fascinating. Some people had got the roof, some people had got the side of the building, some people had got the trees. When you put it all together, you'd got the target. And what they'd drawn, you'd actually got the target of what it was. So as a collective, as a group can zone in very easily on the target, and experienced remote viewers become aware of their mental noise from memory. So the intuition, you don't like that person, that signal, noise is all the other bit that went with it, trusting your gut, as you say, and it's a noise. So it's all about filtering noise and catching in on the subconscious signal of what's going on. And any visual or audio distractions or anything novel working in the room will tend to show up. So, for example, I was doing one in a hotel in Liverpool a few months back. Great big chandeliers in the room. That would cause noise. Things that would cause noise on the target are these actual flower pictures. They might be a bit noisy, so when you close your eyes all you can see is flowers. That kind of thing, but I think in this room it's quite noiseless really, it's pretty good, which is what you want. But that's what causes, let us say, interference on, let us say, the psychic signal line. It's not psychic, however, it's subconscious, but they call it a signal line. The connection between the target and yourself is called the signal line. Okay, and as you can see, if you just look at your sheet there, you've got the target reference number, yeah? And the box is for you to draw the ideogram, don't worry about it, but the important bit is how quickly you draw the ideogram in the window. And the ideogram is, in simple cases, a squiggly line. That's all it is, and it gets the info like a zip file. So what happens is you'll draw this squiggly line, and that opens the subconscious to the target information in about 2 seconds, and then it comes back to you, and you then draw the target of what you're seeing, and that's where the fun really begins. So the TRN stands for target reference number. They're unique, they have to be randomly generated, you can't use one twice, and it gives the ideogram, that little box that you're going to do, gives a 3-second window into the collective mind. It's very clever. The best way to do it is to do it actually, but that's what that's for, that box is for. Alright, there's some ideogram symbols. As we say, there's some of the squiggly lines that you might instinctively draw. Everybody normally draws subject person or structure man-made, but because we're not trained, or energetics explosions, they're the popular 3, but because we're not trained we don't know what we're drawing, and of course it'll be your first time, so you're drawing lines, you don't quite know what they mean, but they have a language all of their own, these ideogram symbols, and that's the key to it. And what we have to do is, the ideogram is the key. So when I ask you to draw your squiggly line in that box, but let's stay with it because it's quite fascinating, you don't do it like that, that's too slow, that's too slow, you have to do it like that, and that might be too slow. Quick as you can, that was ideal probably, quick as you can, a squiggle, quick as you can, just like that, random, ba-boom, 2 seconds. In that split second, the subconscious, you've opened a window in space-time, your subconscious has gone to the target, retrieved information, it's back at you. Such is the nature of non-locality and how it works. So the idea is to then decode the information. Just let me borrow a sheet. So as you can see, what we then do is, from that ideogram, we then look at the texture of the target, the colours of the location, the smells, the taste, the temperatures and the sounds, and then we do, is there any motion there, like motion and density or anything like that, and what would it feel if you were there? And then of course you draw it on the back. You'd actually draw it on the back what you think the target is, or what it looks like. It's quite fun. Okay, now if you look there, you've got something called AOL's question mark, yeah? That is actually a filtering system to filter the conscious noise, and it's called analytical overlay, AOL, yeah? And what happens is as you're doing this, you might think, oh, I want my tea. Oh, is it over yet? Oh, I need to get a pint of Guinness. That's known as noise. So because you're on a signal line trying to retrieve data, that's going to be noise, and you declare it in AOL. In some rare cases, the person hears and sees the target and thinks it's junk thinking and declares it as AOL. So analytical overlay is junk thoughts, and you can have, it's designed to declare spurious thoughts. There are many AOL types. You'll discover there are many types of AOL going on. For example, you might have as you're doing the target with AOL, you suddenly might have this, is it pink, is it grey, is it pink, is it grey? That might happen to you. Or a rapid flow of ideas bombarding your mind, because your mind isn't trained to recognise signals, you see. And there's also this one, this will be the classic that we all do, the AOL matching. Target is a church, you see a cathedral. Target is an aeroplane, you see a space rocket. 9 times out of 10 people will go, oh my god, I saw the airplane and I put space rocket, because you don't follow the intuitive signal in the first few seconds. It's a lot of training. So you can see with these guys how these remote viewers had to do a lot of training to understand in the first few seconds what was going on and go with it. Do you follow me? Any questions, anyone? No questions?
So I'm still a little bit kind of taught understand, actually.
That's all right, because what we'll do is we'll just do it. Because I find that I can sit here and yak on forevermore, but if we just do it, you'll know exactly what we're doing. You'll see, just don't worry about it. The important thing to do is, in your box, is like a squiggly line in the box there. Let's move forward to the next one. All right, don't worry about it, don't worry. Okay, and of course we've got something on there which are word descriptors. So what the remote viewers did, and you don't have to do it as in-depth as this, it's just a taste of what's going on. But what the remote viewers did, for example, is there was word descriptors. So what would happen is we'd have a look at the write one word there. So can you see that? So what we've got is a template here, an example template, where they've done the squiggly line. I've given them the reference number. They've done the squiggly line in the box. They've gone there slick, slippery, wet, hard, the textures. They've gone with the colours. They can see white, blue, green and black. The smells. They can see that the place there, we've got kind of the temperatures, which are cold, frigid, warm, and there's something going on there. They're hearing cracking sounds, crunching sounds, and the AOL Jonah and the whale they've put there as a spurious fort, and also there they've got all kinds of data, and they feel excited when they're there, based on that squiggle, which seems to have a logic of its own, as you can see. So that's typically what they would fill out, and it's a more complex system, and not complex, that's not the word. It's an advanced system similar to, I close my eyes, what do I read from this book with my eyes closed? It's an advanced system of that, you see. Do you follow so far on that? So it's an advanced system of using the subconscious to gather information. So sometimes you've just got to do it. So let's just go through it again. The TRN is the target reference number. The ideogram is like a zip file. So in other words, you draw your squiggly line, 2 seconds, a subconscious window opens, retrieves information, and your conscious mind decodes it, and the ALO column is to declare jump forts. The thing is that with this exercise, you've got to do it to know what we're doing, if you get me. So I'll shut up talking and we'll get on with it. Would you like to have a go?
Yeah.
Okay then, let's hit you with a target number. Okay. Alright, some guidelines by the way. You're going to get strong images. Mental images are noise, and they could be mistaken for information. And in some cases, people draw the target. I mean, there was a guy who just said, I know what it is, and he drew it. It was a target we did, which was a UFO, and knew exactly what it was, which was incredible. Right, so there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you dimensions, that's right. That's it, okay. So dimensions are also the key. And if you have strong dimensions like triangular shapes or a tower shape, go with it, okay? Go with it. And we will always know if motion, life form or energy is present. You will always detect it. Always detect it and always do the symbol for it. Definitely so. Let's walk us through it then. So we're going to walk through the first target. So just have a look at that. I'm going to shout out a reference number. It won't be that one, but I'm going to shout out a reference number. You're going to draw your ideogram. And very quickly, you're going to want to know what the target is. What data are you picking up? We'll simplify it psychically. What data are you picking up from the location? And write it down. So we've got white grips, as we've seen there. What's it like when you've been there? And then turn over the page and draw the target.
Tony, would it help to do an ideogram with my eyes shut?
Yes, it would. Good. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're quite right. Sorry. Do the ideogram with your eyes shut as well in the square box, and rapidly move away from it and we'll write down the target data as well.
Is that immediately after the reference number?
Yes,
right.
As quick as you can. Just do it, and then we'll walk through this first one. Just walk through this first one. It gives you a drift of what's going on. You know, and you don't have to do it. Just enjoy the lecture. That's all I can say. You know, it's not a competition. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk through it. So I'm going to give you the first reference number. Okay. So the first target reference number is 1010701363. 10701363. Draw your squiggly line, quick as you can, and then imagine that you're at the target. And what's there? What's the textures of it? What colours are present? What smells could be there? It's as if you've remotely located yourself to the place where that reference number is. What does it tell you? What is it saying? Look at your ideogram, perhaps that might tell you something. Have you got any junk thoughts? Just write them in. Sometimes the junk thoughts are target data on rare occasions. Temperatures, sounds, what was it like if you're there? Turn over your page and draw psychically what you think the target is. It's a bit like eyeless sight reading. It's exactly in a way, it's an enhanced version of it. Take your time with it. Just have a look. Can I have a seat round? So you do it. Oh. That's interesting. That's all right. Right, okay, let's have a go. So what we'll do, let's have a go. So, let's see. It'll be nice for you to do. The trouble is I know what the target is, right? So, the last time I got it right. So I've given you a target reference number, and it's a bit like a psychic reading of information. I'm going to draw a squiggly line there like that, and I'm going to close my eyes and think what textures are there. Well, we'll go rough, smooth, I don't know, colours, grey, red,
high-ranking psychic
I have an AOL kicking in the feet, see what I'm doing? Smells fresh.
Yeah. They use it as the first
Salty taste. I'm psychically feeling salty from the location. I've gone to the location, I located myself in the location. And the temperatures were cold and the location.
get into the
It's in the psychic
trees.
of July this year. I'm reading it, yes, it's the full page.
Dimensions, tall, you try and you see what I'm doing? So what I'm doing is if I close my eyes, I'm psychically located to somewhere via that reference number. And I'm asking, if I close my eyes, what's there, what do I see, what do I think? And the
Trail
actual
run.
aspect of it is
It's trail run.
Yeah, and then what we'll do,
Yes,
now I'm going to draw
they have
What's your squiggle?
to help you I'm going to do this.
for example,
Did you get a squiggle?
what Tony Dawkins computer.
I'm getting that impression. I don't know what that's
has
about.
got
Strong
what
dimension, strong shapes. I'm getting from that psychic location. I'm getting some impression from
They
it.
can do it on your computer.
Strong shape. I'm picking up the impression from it.
Whole
I'm
speed.
there. I can see it. Something going on there underneath it. Sensing of it.
Instinct was right. Mine never is. So I don't trust me.
Yeah, it could be like a road.
I don't.
Yeah, do you get what we're doing? All I'm sensing.
You know, all I'm doing
Instincts are
Yeah.
So the wings
was named
just see the water.
not any instincts.
That's what I'm getting.
he was a man.
I don't know if we
Enigma.
I won't use this because I'll technically have helped you, so I can't really, but basically that's kind of
Yeah,
like the...
he committed
I like
suicide
using it
Yeah.
because I like using it.
homosexuality.
Yeah.
Also, during
I'll do
the
that because it's a fight.
Iraq War, there was that Dr. Shepley, Ministry of Defense advisor.
Don't worry.
He was a specialist
Kelly.
in David Kelly.
Yes.
He committed suicide.
He was murdered.
Murdered by the MI5. You know
Yeah,
why?
that's right.
You know why?
Because
So
he knew
that's
too
so
much.
Yes.
And he was going to discredit and use war.
So do you understand?
You wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Not only that,
Energetic ideogram. That's an ideogram. What have you got in the background?
It's like steel.
Yeah, that's
I've got like
interesting.
heavy steel.
Yeah, right on there, heavy steel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Wonderful. Can I set that as
Yeah.
an example? Right. Because you were picking up heavy steel. Anybody else? Examples or anything? Have you
Like
got
jury.
No, I don't.
My wife.
Yeah. Okay, so in the first 2 seconds. Do you want to know what it is? That's interesting. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
Show you the target, right? Okay, let's walk through it. Target reference number. Okay.
Oh,
Oh.
bloody hell.
Did you get that?
I got hard metallic.
Yeah.
I drew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I was drawing the pyramid.
Hey, brilliant.
Yeah. So it's the Eiffel Tower. You got heavy steel.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
very
You were
good.
getting the intuition of heavy steel.
Yeah.
And for did anybody else get it at all? Did anybody else get it? No.
I got mountain signs.
Mountain size? Yeah. Did
Is that
anybody
the-
get clouds? Did anybody get trees?
No.
Flagpoles? No. But somebody got steel.
I got white.
Yeah.
There's white clouds there.
Yeah. White clouds. Yeah. This is Kev's. Now he got steel, and he got smells, cold wind. Yeah. He got all that. Heavy steel. So he did that. Heavy steel. And then he thought to himself, he was on target, and then he thought, oh, I know what it is, analytical overlay, noise, that's noise coming in where he thinks it's a ship, because it's heavy steel, so that's a noise, that's noise, waylaying him from what the target is, yeah? So there we go. Then we got this one as an example, and she's got energetics, then she's got there, for it. This is an example, we'll just use this as an example, and as you can see, what she's got there is structure. But then she thinks, then that, oh, it's a bridge. There must be cars and traffic and water, analytical overlay and noise, because what a remote viewer knows is that is the first signal in the first 2 seconds. And what Joseph McMonigal would do, he'd probably go for the tower at the top. By the time Joe McMonigal had finished, he'd have had the Eiffel Tower there.
She's got the bottom, she's got the arch.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it, that's intuitive signal. So you've got the arch, yeah? Got the
Is that
arch, as you can
Trish's?
see, yeah?
Is that yours?
Yeah, good, isn't it? Very good, isn't it? Considering she didn't know what you were doing.
You helped us a little.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? But you can see from that structure there, she thinks she's drawing a road bridge, when in fact it's the Eiffel Tower structure up there. All right, so anybody else near? What did you draw, mate? Because you're pretty good, aren't you?
Well,
Oh.
the
Ah, now look at this, look at this. These are, why I'm interested in all this is the way the subconscious impressions do come through, that we ignore them. And his subconscious impression is the flagpoles.
Yeah, yeah.
You got the flagpoles?
the first thing that came into my mind earlier on, I was seeing this before you actually give us the numbers, in perspective.
Yeah.
I saw things in perspective.
Yes, right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. So what he's got there is he's got the flagpoles, which is a conscious. That's kind of like an intuitive interpretation of what's going on. So he was on target there. So what would have probably happened? But what happens is that he sees the flagpoles. He's there with the subconscious, but because we're not taught correctly, that would be about a 2-second burst of signal. His conscious mind decides that, oh, well, there must be some sort of fence or some sort of chains on it or something like that. Oh, and then there must be a river going through it. So you can see how at first his subconscious picks up on the flagpoles, but then noise kicks in and he starts drawing mountains and a river going through it and this, that and the other.
Actually wasn't sure if that was a river or a road.
Or a road even. Oh, so you might have seen the road, right, yeah.
I couldn't decide.
But you
whether
couldn't
it was
decide.
a river or a road.
Yeah. So do you see how it works? How subconsciously we are navigated at first, in the first 2 seconds, and then we move into noise and it all starts becoming what we think it is compared to what it is. So for example, did you listen to the noise or the signal? Did you hear flags? Did you hear birds, poles? If you saw a structure, has it got steel? Has it got height? Oh, it must be a block of flats. Is it a tower? Oh, it's a tower. Oh, it must be a block of flats. No, it's the Eiffel Tower. Do you see how the you hear the word tower, your subconscious is there, and then it goes into, oh, it's a block of flats. Oh, it's got trees to it. This is the technique of remote viewing where you have to signal the filter the signal from the noise. Did you understand that, the process? Quite fascinating, isn't it? Okay, shall we do another target?
Was there any birds on it?
Oh, that's a good
Because
question.
I actually wrote birds, but I didn't see any of that.
No, not that I can
No.
see, but there was definitely flags on it. Which did some of you get the flags? I think you got it, didn't you, mate? You got it, yeah.
Yeah,
Flags.
but the textures,
I
colours
got the
and that.
impression, oh sorry, Sorry. I got the impression of being in a lift. Is there a lift in the
Yeah,
Eiffel
yeah.
Tower?
There's a lift in the Eiffel Tower, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's actually very good because that means you were probably at the target, you see,
God.
subconsciously. It's non-locality. The subconscious moves in time and space differently to conscious, you see. But there you go. Shall we do another target then, ladies and gentlemen?
I'll just go for this.
Do you get in the drift of it now, Lovey?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. We'll do so. Yeah. So are they present? So were these ideograms present? Well, I'm sure somebody did a structure one. Somebody did an energetic explosion one. I'm sure somebody did a subject person or a structure. Are you noticing how these shapes, these random squiggles, do in fact have their own language to them? They have a connection to what's going on. It's quite amazing, but it works. We'll work another target, shall we, ladies and gents? Is that all right, yeah? Okay, let's work another target. So the target reference number of this one is 3640 4737. Do your squiggly line. Like shouting the bingo. What textures, colours? Go with that first impression. The first 2 second impression, go with it. How are we doing? Would you like me to reveal it, or are you still... Oh, still drawing. To reveal it to you, or are you still drawing something? Okay, can I reveal? Yeah. No, this is presentation concept. What's going on there? That one.
No, nowhere near.
No. Anybody get anything on that one? It's quite a hard one actually, I think. Complicated. You got the plane though, didn't you?
Yeah, isn't a plane on there though, is there?
No, there is. There is. Little planes going on it. Yeah, you zoned in on it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you see what he got there. He drew a plane. He drew a Viama. So can you see his subconscious mind actually zoned in on these objects here for the first 2 seconds, but then his conscious mind said it was a helicopter with a blade on it. This is so you can see the techniques that these remote viewers have to work for. They've got to hone it till they know their 2 second instincts is right on the game. So what you did is you draw the plane, which is correct, but then your conscious mind said, helicopter, ba-bum. Yeah?
You know that bit at the bottom?
Yeah.
That looks like a fire?
Yes.
Because I got structure, then black, then burned.
Yeah, so
and
you're
that
zoning on that.
Explosion and tornado and that. And that bit at the bottom looks like an explosion.
That's a strong visual. That's a strong visual. A little bit busy that
So then
side.
I just used my conscious mind and thought, oh, it's a crash.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a crash.
Yeah.
But the things I wrote, I thought structure, black,
Yeah.
and then
There was the explosion bit that threw it.
Yeah. So you picked up. Did you? Anybody else pick up on anything?
Well, funny enough, I couldn't get a picture.
Right.
I couldn't see.
Right.
But I got the texture was rough.
Yeah.
Colour was black.
Yeah.
Same as Maureen.
Yeah.
Smell was earthy.
Yeah.
Taste bitter.
Yeah.
But I got quickness and activity of
Yeah.
motion around it.
Yeah.
And I felt good being there.
Yeah. That's right. That's absolutely right. But
I
you
couldn't get
were
an
bang on with the plane, definitely. Yeah. But you couldn't get the what, sorry,
I
mate?
couldn't get an image.
No. 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 It's a little intense and a little noisy for beginners. Is that actually? I might change it next time. But I just thought it might make so much fun to do. But
Can you practice this by yourself, Tony?
Can you what, sorry? Yes.
Is it something you can practice at home?
Yeah, there is, mate. You can
Think
practice.
of what's on the next
Yeah.
page of a book or something.
Yes, you can do that. Yeah, and we've got some CDs with the courses on, with the CRB course on,
Right.
saving you a few quid there actually, because it's quite expensive. We've got that on. Yeah, so I like that. That's pretty good, and it shows a good example of remote viewing at a very rudimentary beginning level. That he zoned in on that, and probably what would happen if a professional remote viewer would expand and start seeing the structure of the elephant and the symbolism and all that kind of. You're not expected to do that at this stage, but I think that's pretty good actually for a first attempt. Did anybody get any textures or colours by any chance? No?
Black.
Black, yeah.
Black.
Yeah.
White.
White, you got white as well, yeah. Do you see how it all, that is a subconscious connection to the target, definitely. And as I say, I repeat again, how the conscious mind kicks in, so he decides to put a propeller up because he thinks it's a helicopter.
What's the likelihood of someone like drawing a car or a train, or do you know
That's what I
things
drew.
that we see all the time? You know,
Yeah,
like
that would be analytical overlay.
yeah.
That would be noise. It's a form of a plane is a form of transportation. Art, it's a car.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, it's moving. It must be a car. They haven't allowed their subconscious mind to go. No, it's a plane. You see what I'm saying? They just haven't allowed their subconscious mind to do that. It's a bit of I thought I'd just do some different targets for a change. Did anybody get the symbolisms in the top, lower left, lower right at all? No.
No.
No. Okay. Let's work the next target.
Oh, I didn't see the little mouse sticking his head out.
Yeah.
You see the little mouse there?
Oh yes, he has his mouse.
Yeah.
Oh my
Never
God, he
seen
does
that.
have his mouse. His mouse causes him enough bother and
You know,
chaos.
if we didn't
Is
think-
that the equivalent of a monkey on your shoulder? Is it
It's
the
the
same sort
equivalent of
thing?
the control of the conscious mind within the human existence.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of having urges and emotional urges running riot in you, and that's your mouse, and you have to control it.
Well, that would
That's-
be the monkey mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some Chinese call it
Chinese.
monkey mind.
Yeah, that's right. The mouse of Lord Ganesh. Yeah. So it's basically a mouse kind of thing that he uses to symbolise control.
If we didn't feel confident in drawing it, could we just describe it in
Yeah.
words?
Yes, you could. Yes, you could describe it in words. Would you like to go at the next target? And there's a
We
little.
have to be good at this one.
Yeah.
then. This is my third one.
This is the third one. Yeah, have a go. Yeah. When I did this at Birmingham a few years ago, I actually had heat stroke giving the talk and completely cocked it up. Just completely and utterly cocked it up. And I actually thought that they wanted me on for an hour, but they wanted me on for 2 hours. And I revealed the targets. I was that, and I just revealed the targets. Hence me putting a little safety slide in, so I don't reveal the target when I'm pressing buttons. Anyway, that's your next target reference number. 508753. still all drawing. Would you like me to reveal the target, or are you still at it? Okay to reveal it, yeah? Is that okay? Did anybody get that? Anything at all from that? It was quite strong visually in many ways, isn't it?
No.
A Nordic symbolic vision.
Got
Anybody?
a pyramid.
Yeah, so you, yeah,
Pyramid.
yeah, you would, yeah.
Triangle.
Yeah, well done, well done. Considering you didn't understand it, that's pretty good, isn't it? So, oh my word, yeah, right, okay. And what she's done, look, she's got the subconscious kind of signals what it is to her in the ideogram box. So a professional remote viewer would gain a lot from that. That structure, its shape, she could go with that. And then what she did is this, that. Can you see? Yeah. Now, no, it's not. At a rudimentary level, considering you've only done an hour at it, that's a subliminal impression at a very rudimentary level of what's going on at the target, which is the triangles. And you've picked that up, but your analytical overlay kicks in, the consciousness kicks in. Oh, it's a yacht, it's on the water, it's a sail, it's a triangle. Oh, it must have windows on it. Actually, the windows, your interpretation of the windows.
They're bricks.
Oh, bricks are they? Right, okay, I was going to say that. I was thinking there might be lights.
That's the sand.
But that's the sand, yeah. So what happens is there, 2 seconds, the subconscious knows that she's drawing a flying triangle, but the conscious says, oh, that's the sand, there's the bricks. Do you see what we're aiming at? It's that gap in the conscious. Let's have a look at yours, man.
I thought it was a starfish.
That's a that's a starfish, yeah. So she's drawn a starfish there. Now
The circles look like they've got like beams coming out of them.
Yeah. Yes, they do, and the thing that indeed they do, and the thing is, what is interesting is she's drawn the shape of the target on the ideogram in the first second, because the subconscious knows what it's looking at. So, quite clever, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now you might think, well, no, that can't be right, but the remote viewing is all about following through the subconscious impression. It takes a lot of training, you see. So let's have a look what we got. Yellow. Did anybody get clocks?
No.
No. Anybody get blonde hair or see impression of him?
I've got people. And happy.
Yeah.
Was he a good Nordic?
Yes, he is. Yeah. Blue
so
eyes.
And I felt warm.
Yeah.
And sweet.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, I mean, I thought I was at Disneyland, to be honest, because I could swing and roundabouts.
Yeah.
But my first, the first one,
Yeah.
which was the Eiffel Tower,
Yeah.
I actually drew that.
Oh.
Now, how close is that to that?
Yeah. Well, now that could be interpreted, but this is a rudimentary level, and I might be wrong, but that could be interpreted as analytical overlay of some description, where you're seeing the target a few minutes down the line from the other target that we've done, and there's like the mind's seeing it intuitively.
That was supposed to be the Eiffel Tower,
yeah.
but I actually drew that, and it's more like that.
Yeah. I mean, at this stage of the game, at this level, what the remote viewer would actually have is they'd probably have about, if we did it properly in session, they'd probably have about 15 separate drawings that would all lead up to the target. That's how thorough and accurate they had to be. So this is very rudimentary what we're doing here, but nevertheless, it's still very good and very good efforts as well from you.
The first thing I saw the number down was I thought all I can see is a triangle.
Yeah.
I thought it's got to be a pyramid.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I saw the colours,
It's got to be a pyramid.
Gold,
Yeah.
Try to make sense of it.
I just thought probably like.
But you can see even at sorry, interrupted. Go on. Sorry.
Like the smells would be like fruit smells.
Yeah.
And like highly spicy smells, and the sand just golden and sunshine.
Yeah. You see, you saw sun shining.
Yes.
When you see, look, you see. What have you got? What have you zoned in on there? There's light there, isn't there?
Yeah,
and your subconscious sees that, but your conscious says sun. And the bricks are. I believe those bricks that you've drawn is your subconscious picking up those lights. Do you see? And it's known as the Nordic symbolic vision. And I'll close now on my lecture on remote viewing in India with the little story connected behind this, behind the Nordic symbolic vision. For over 40 years I've had interaction with UFOs and the people behind them. I first saw this dude in 2014. I don't know his name, but I know he's there. I've seen him on a couple of occasions, a lovely guy. I'd be lying if I said I knew his name. I don't. He might tell me one day. And that was the symbolic vision that I talked about earlier in my lecture. But note the field, and that's the important thing to note, because that vision and that field triggered something in my local town. You see. So note the field. So that's drawn by Lloyd Canning. He's done an excellent job. And if you note the field, that's the field where repeated UFO interactions have been, and that's the field where these two UFOs were going to turn up. So thinks our military, because that field became the object of the biggest air operation over, not in Britain I would think, but it was a big air operation. What happened next was, a few months down the line, a major exercise took place that involved the RAF, the Luftwaffe and a few others. And what happened next, it was a major exercise over the town involving Typhoons, Chinooks and Hercules aircraft. The Hercules circled my house 7 times, and he would be, because they're on the hunt for UFOs, I think there was some operation going on, and they maybe knew a bit more than me, but that's him. And what he's doing is he's going left, and then he goes back right, he's circling me, he even waves at me. He's got eyes on that field, and that Hercules is part of the Special Forces Aviation Wing, and there are other air units, including a Chinook in the area as well, which was absolutely incredible air exercise going on, focused on that field, specifically that field. There he is up close, and he's doing some routine landings at Bern Aerodrome, but still, it's a heavy UFO presence in the area, and that Hercules is part of the Special Forces Aviation Wing, and it's circled my house 7 times. Now, were they on the hunt for UFOs? I don't quite know, but our intrepid guy, Jason, my team thought, that Hercules has got to be tracked by a UFO. And so we ran some image analysis to discover that, yes, indeed, we were right. There was an object shadowing that UFO, and there it is there, up close, and it's close to the UFO, as you can see. So there's the C-130 coming in, and the UFO is shadowing it. It's not hostile. It's designed to... It's like some sort of galactic NATO waving at our military, as far as I'm concerned. They're not hostile. They're respectful of our Air Force. They'll keep a distance. They're not there to antagonise them in any way. I think it's more of a communication thing that's going on. And that's the Hercules in our image analysis of it shadowing, the UFO is shadowing the Herc up near my local area, and it's near the field as well where it was going on. There it is up close again, as we can see. And that's definitely some sort of object in the area. How right we were on our analysis there. We know that it's not a smudge on the lens or anything like that, or a bird for that matter, we certainly know. There we go, that's our, so there you can see it, that's analysis 1 with filters. Oh, that's it, right. So that's our analysis of it there, with using different filters. So we know there is in the skies above Britain presence of these Nordic ETs. We know that they're certainly watching over me, because if there wasn't, I wouldn't be able to do this, and I'm very lucky that I can be here, be alive, and just be sane enough to stand up in front of you and do all this. I think there's always, I'll strive again for more room to improve, I know, but I think you've been a very nice audience, you've been very relaxed around me. That's been a tremendous help, actually, being relaxed and chilled out. It's helped me as a speaker. It's just been marvellous, and I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.